B'Shem Hashem Naaseh v'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Baruch Hashem. We're glad to be back in Iggeret HaRamban here in Aventura. This Shiur Torah, our program. Baruch Hashem, see some new faces, some returning faces, some more people, Baruch Hashem. The shiur we had on Sunday was packed. I think we ran out of chairs. So, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue doing that and have to build the second floor. So, tonight we have the shiur, the program where every Tuesday we talk about the Iggeret HaRamban, which is a letter for anyone who hasn't been here or anyone that forgot. It's a letter that the Ramban, Nachmanides, wrote to his son almost 900 years ago. And pretty much instructions for life. Now, of course, you could read the entire Torah from Aleph to Taf and get the instructions to life. But most people today, especially the ones that are obligated, like the Jewish people, have never really read the Torah from Aleph to Taf. Most Jewish people haven't read the Torah from the beginning till the end. Some people that read it didn't understand it because they were reading it like they were reading a Harry Potter book. You know, they were reading it like the Christians read it, which is without commentary, trying to rationalize things, which is a mistake because the Torah is not a rational document. Torah is divine. Divine is beyond your common sense. So, the Iggeret HaRamban is a much shorter version of the Torah. It's an instructions of how to have a good life. But not just in Gan Eden, which is the place that a lot of people have a hard time understanding. Rather in this world. So you'll see from the letter that the Ramban wrote clear instructions to his son, what to do, how to do, in order to have a good life. But he doesn't talk about, you ask people today, what do I need in order to have a good life? 99% of people are going to tell you, make a lot of money. Make a lot of money, you have a lot of good life. Funny thing is, when I was on Wall Street for almost 20 years, my business was with millionaires. All my customers were millionaires. If you weren't a millionaire, you weren't my customer. Why? You can't make money off of poor people, unless you're the government. So, if you wanted to be a customer, you had to have at least $500,000 liquid, meaning $500,000 just to play with, if you want to be a customer. But that's not the ideal customer, that's the smallest customer. So I dealt with people like that, and I dealt with people that had $1 billion liquid. Meaning that all my customers were multi-millionaires. And I was my own biggest customer. You know what the funny thing is about millionaires? 99.999% of them are miserable. Even more miserable than the guy that doesn't have $1 million. Why? Because the guy that's broke, the guy that doesn't have any money, he has hope that one day he's going to have a lot of money and then he's going to be happy. He has a lot of problems right now, and he figures money's going to solve all his problems. So he has hope that one day I'm going to get a lot of money, I'm going to win the lotto, and I'm going to be happy. He has hope. The millionaire has all the money and still has a lot of problems. So he has no hope. Why? Because you cannot become happy for money. Happiness is a spiritual feeling. Happiness is something spiritual. It's not something physical. It's not something tangible. You can't buy happiness. Even if you buy the fanciest car that you've always wanted, okay, after 3 months, it's the same thing as a Toyota. Doesn't matter what kind of car. It could be a $500,000 car, $1 million car, doesn't make a difference. After a few months, it's the same thing as any other car. You could buy the nicest house that you saw on TV, 25 rooms, even though you could only sleep at one at a time. 25 rooms. The walls talk to you. There's music coming out of the floor. Chandelier goes up and down just in case you want to see it. Whatever you wanted to do, it's doing. After a couple of months, it's the same thing as an apartment over here for $1,000 a month. Why? You go, you open the door, you go to the bathroom, you finish the bathroom, you go to the kitchen, you take maybe a little bulekas with some juice, you eat, you finish, you go to sleep. Same thing. 25 rooms, 2 rooms, 1 room, it's all the same thing. At the end, it's tachlis, the whole same thing. Now, most people are not going to believe me because most people didn't have money yet. I'm telling you from experience. I had an apartment on the 35th floor in Manhattan. My balcony alone was 400 square feet. Just the balcony. The apartment itself was 2,000 square feet. And the beauty is that it didn't make me 1 ounce happier. It doesn't change your happiness. So the Ramban gives his son instructions of how to be happy. He's not telling you go be broke. He's not telling you be homeless. He's not telling you anything against money. he's telling you that shouldn't be your main ambition in life if you want to have a good life. So this series that we started about this letter a couple of months ago, a month and a half ago, is still in its beginning. We're going to go over some of the beginning steps of it, but I highly recommend that you guys pay attention to it, because this could be something that if you pay attention to every word, even if you apply 10% of what you remember, it could change your life. Or you could waste your time and just fill in another spot in the chair. Now, the time as far as for the kids that are here, for the program, Torah Challenge program, which is most of you, starts when I start talking, which is now. Not if you came in 15 minutes early while we're still setting up, it doesn't start. The idea is to be here as long as possible, because first and foremost, being here is going to help your life. Not being here is not going to help your life. Also, we have a raffle for the last couple of times. I think the kids like the raffle that we have. Anybody that stays to the end gets a chance to get a raffle. Today there's another bag with some more electronic stuff. There's a Bluetooth speaker and some books, some interesting stuff. Whoever stays at the end wins the raffle. Is going to have the opportunity to win the raffle. Enjoy the food. Enjoy the shiurim, but please do me a favor, pay attention, don't waste your time. If you're already going to be here, Kadosh Baruch Hu means that He sent you here for a reason. He didn't send you here just to fill into a chair. So, the biggest issue that we have today in the world, especially in the Western society, is that over 80% of couples get divorced. That means that all of you youngsters, if you live a life like most people in America, and most people in the world, you're better off not to get married. You're better off not to get married. Why? It's a complete waste of money and time if you're going to live a secular life. Why? There's an 80% chance, 82% chance you're going to get divorced. Meaning, you're more likely to fail than to succeed. What's the point? If somebody told you, listen, I have 100 cups. 100 cups, you're thirsty, Gatorade, water, whatever you want, 100 cups over here. Hey, have a sip. But before you have a sip, there's a 1% chance, not 80% chance, there's a 1% chance there's a poison in one of them. How many of you are going to drink? You're going to take a chance? You're going to take a 1% chance to... Don't worry, anytime somebody comes in, it's only people. It's not aliens. I don't have to lose you for 15 minutes. It's just people. It's just people. They have, they put pants on one leg at a time, just like you. Their blood looks red, just like everybody else. They have eyes, ears, same thing. Nothing special about them. Just another guy. Just another girl. So, anyone with a little bit of brain knows that if you have even a 1% chance of drinking poison, you're not going to take it. But in the marriage world today, there's an 80% chance that it's poison. Why? It has nothing to do with marriage. Technically, people are supposed to get married. You want to reproduce, you want to build a life together, you want to do things together, you have to have a wife, you have to have a husband. It has nothing to do with the religion. Because whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, you're still supposed to have somebody in your life. Especially as you get older, you don't want to be alone, and so on and so forth. It has nothing to do with money, because rich people and poor people, they both get divorced. Rich people get divorced more often, but poor people also get divorced. The reason why marriages fail is for the same reason today that we are having a hard time in the religious community actually having marriages happen. They're calling it, in the religious world, they call it a shidduch crisis. Shidduch crisis, meaning that they're having a hard time matching boys and girls. They're having a hard time matching boys and girls to get married. Which one's going to talk, you or me? You want to give a lecture? As long as you pay the $15. You ready? Remember what I told you guys 2 weeks ago. This is not public school. I'm not a substitute teacher. So, in the religious world, they're having something called a shidduch crisis. Meaning, young boys, young girls, they want to get married, but they can't find anybody. How could it be? There's plenty of young boys, there's plenty of young girls. They both want to get married, but they can't find each other. So you figure, wait, so just get a shadchan, just get somebody to do it. Well, you have plenty of those. You have plenty of people that are trying to make matches, but it's still not working out. Why is it not working out? Why is it not working? Anybody wants to guess why it's not working out?
Pickiness.
Who?
Pickiness.
Very good.
In-laws.
In-laws. No? Who else?
Different levels of
Different levels of religious observance. Okay. No? What else?
Racism.
Racism. It's good. No, racism. It exists. Racism exists. Ashkenazim have a thing. Sfaradim have a thing. Sfaradim against Sfaradim. Sfaradim against everybody's against everybody. Yeah, of course. Why do you think the Bet Mikdash hasn't been built? Because we're tzaddikim.
No, it's Moroccans against the world.
It's everybody against everybody. There's a pasuk in the Torah about it. There's a pasuk in the Torah. It says, "Ma'arsaich u'me'arvaich b'mech yetzeu." Your conquerors, your destroyers, will come from within you. Meaning, your biggest enemy is you. Am Yisrael, your biggest enemy is not the Arabs. It's not the ISIS. It's not Daesh. It's not the Christian world. It's not. You know who's the biggest enemy? Us. Who are the biggest and most successful Christian missionaries in the world? What religion were they born? Jews. Who are the biggest enemies of Am Yisrael? Erev Rav. What's the Erev Rav? Jews. Liberal Jews. Liberal Jews, lefty Jews that run the Israeli government, that run politics in America as well, that are anti-Torah, communist type of mentality, atheist mentality. Those are the biggest enemies of the world, especially of Am Yisrael itself. So, Sinat Chinam, the whole baseless hatred and racism between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim, Sfaradim and Ashkenazim, Sfaradim and Sfaradim, Ashkenazim and Ashkenazim. If you're not from this one, if you're not from Poland and you're from this one, everybody has something. But that's not the real reason. That's not the real reason we have a shidduch crisis. No, last chance.
It's based on appearance?
Appearance?
No, it's yourself.
You're good looking. Are you married?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. You're not married, right?
Yeah.
Why are you not married? It's not because you looks.
I'm 17.
So what? 17 already, you should be in a shidduch. Huh? What's wrong with being in a shidduch? It's not the looks. It's not the looks. It's not the looks. It's not the looks. No, it's not the looks. It's not the looks. There's plenty of guys that are older than you that want to get married, or your age, that want to get married, but they're not getting married. It's not the looks. Baruch Hashem, we have a plenty of good-looking people, plenty of ugly people, plenty of the middle people. There's a match for everybody. There's a frog for every frog. There's a cow for every cow. There's a supermodel for every supermodel. It's not the looks. It's not the looks.
Is it a simulation?
Simulation is a problem too. Okay, so let's get to the bottom of it. The reason why there's over 80% divorce rate in the world today, and there is a very, very big crisis in the religious Jewish world today that they call a shidduch crisis, where boys and girls are not able to find each other, has to do with a little bit of one of the things that you said, which is we have something called a midot crisis. People, midot is character traits. People simply do not know how to behave like human beings. We know how to behave like animals. Human beings, not so much. It's very, very easy for a human being to act like an animal, because that's part of him. That's the animal instinct that's in all of us. The problem is that if you're an animal all the time, a human being is not going to want to marry you. So today we have a crisis in both the secular and the religious world because people don't know how to behave. In the old days, when my grandparents got married, they got married when they were 12, 13 years old. Now I know in this age this sounds strange, but it doesn't really sound strange for your grandparents. I promise you. And your great-grandparents that got also married 12, 13, 15, 16 years old, it wasn't so strange. Today you think, what, get married at 18? What am I, this? What am I, Bukharian, you said? What am I, Moroccan? What am I, from Saudi Arabia? No, has nothing to do with that. It has to do with a mentality. Has to do with mentality. If a person understands what it means to be single and the risk you're taking by being single, you're going to want to get married as soon as possible. Why? Because you young men, you have desires. You young women, you have desires. The problem is that if you fulfill those desires without being married, the type of punishment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give you will make you regret the day you were born. Now, less talking, guys. Less talking. Let's just keep it one. Me talking, you guys listening. Now, the problem is that even if you want to get married, you want to be religious, you want to keep Shabbat, you want to do all the mitzvot, you want to do all the good things, you want to find somebody, you're going to have a hard time. Why? Because sometimes you want something, she wants something, but it's not the same thing. Now, in the old days, if the couple had a difference of opinion, she wanted black, he wanted white. She wanted a new living room, he wanted a new bedroom. They simply worked it out. Everyone has difference of opinion. Every couple has a difference of opinion. In the old days, when you had a difference of opinion, you had an argument, guess what? You want to be married? You fix it. You compromise. You make certain things. Oh, you don't agree with me? Why don't you agree with me? Because of this, this, and this. Okay, well, you know what? I don't really care about those three things, so fine. Okay, I'll go with you. I'll do whatever you want. We compromised. We worked things out. Even though sometimes bad things happen and there was a big argument and she said something that was awful and he said something that was awful. At the end of the day, you want the marriage to work, you work things out. Today we don't believe in working things out. Today we believe that it's just supposed to work. We think marriage is an iPhone. As soon as it doesn't work right away, we throw it out, buy a new one. Abba, we need a new iPhone. Why? This one doesn't turn on right away. It takes 3 seconds to turn on. It's already too slow in this generation. New model is only 1 second. As soon as something doesn't work fast enough, we want a new one. As soon as the website doesn't go directly to where you want it to go, you don't even want to go on the website. That's why in the marketing world, you have 3 seconds. You know, there's an old saying, there's a 15 seconds in order to give your pitch. You have 15 seconds to get somebody's attention. Today it's 3 seconds. 3 seconds. Why? Because it's the internet. If the website, if the app, if whatever it is that you're marketing doesn't do something within 3 seconds to capture the attention of the audience, you might as well throw it in the garbage. Why? We have zero attention span. We have zero patience. We have zero interest in waiting for things to work out. Now, if it's an app, or it's a website, or it's a phone, it doesn't really matter at the end of it. It doesn't really make a difference. But when it's marriage, when it's a relationship, when it's work, when it's life in general, and you're not used to realizing that you have to make things work in order for them to work, then you have a serious problem. Because what happens is, if you're not going to be patient, if you're not going to develop patience in order to make things work, in order to fix things, and you simply expect them to work, your marriage will fail. It's just a matter of time. Your life will be a failure. It's just a matter of time. Your career will fail. It's just a matter of time. Why? Because good things take work. Anything that's of any value took a lot of work. And if you don't have the patience and the dedication to actually put effort into something, it's better off not to even start. And that's the key for why we have such a high divorce rate right now. People simply think that marriage is supposed to work. And as soon as there's 1, 2, or 3 arguments in a row, they say, listen, it's not working out. We're going to part ways. I'll find somebody else. Little do they know that the somebody else is probably much worse. That somebody else she wants is much, much worse than the first one that she already has. That somebody else he wants that looks good from far because she has different features, different hair, different body, different eyes, different attitude, different accent. He figures, oh, that's going to make her different. As soon as he shows up to his house as a wife, he realizes, Hashem, what did I do to myself? What did I do to myself? But now, his old one, his ex-wife, is an ex now. She has a new husband. So we see here, Rabotai, that if you want things to work out in your life, first and foremost, you have to have a little bit of patience. But there are times that we lose our patience. And the Ramban tells his son a few things in the beginning of the letter. And he says, תתנהג תמיד לדבר כל דבריך בנחת לכל אדם בכל עת ובזה תנצל מן הכעס. So he says, accustom yourself to speak gently to all people at all times. That's what we went over a couple of weeks ago. The last year we had about Iggeret HaRamban. But then he continues and he says, with this gentle speech, it'll protect you from anger. So out of all the things that the Ramban, one of the wisest people that ever lived in history, one of the most important human beings that was ever created by Kadosh Baruch Hu, out of all the things that he could have picked to mention to his son to start off the most important letter of his life, he says, listen, speak gently because it could save you from something really bad. So now you think, what's that something really bad? Maybe war, maybe famine, maybe a disease, maybe what? What is it? Anger. Anger. He says, it's going to save you. Speak gently, you have patience, it'll save you from the worst thing in the world. What is it? Anger. Now most of my life, not only was I an angry person, but I actually thought that being angry is very normal. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. When somebody came to my office, when one of my employees came to my office at 8:05, instead of coming in at 8, now most companies, they don't really care. Come at 8:05, come at 8:10, come at 8:15, don't make a difference. At my company on Wall Street, if you came in at 8:05, you were told to leave the premises and try again tomorrow. Why? Because that 5 minutes really annoyed me. The fact that you dare show up 5 minutes late to my company, something wrong with you. So, it took you an hour to get to work. Okay, it's going to take you an hour and a half to get back home. Next time, think better. Think twice before you show up late. Now, if somebody had an attitude, or they're wasting time, and let's say a couple of people decided that instead of working, they want to play on a computer, or they want to say jokes, they want to waste time, then most of the time they wouldn't be able to keep their job. There wasn't like a 3-strike system. It was 1 strike. Simply all you have to do is annoy me. Now, when I would get angry, and people say, wow, relax, that would actually make me angry. You know, somebody tells you, relax, you're really angry, and say, oh, relax, buddy, relax. Doesn't that make you angrier? It made me much angrier. Why? Because for me, it was very normal to be angry. Why? I was born that way. And the Gemara even says, the Ben Ishchai writes 150 years ago, he says every baby is born angry. First thing he does, starts screaming at everybody. You just don't understand his language. First thing he does, comes out into the world, yelling at everybody else. Why did you take me out? I was resting. The natural inclination of a baby is to be angry. Natural inclination of a human being is to be angry. So I was born angry, so like everybody else. So when somebody tells me, relax, I say, what do you mean relax? I'm like everybody else. What's wrong with being angry? What's wrong with being annoyed? What do you mean? I'm only getting annoyed because you annoyed me. I'm not getting annoyed, Stam. I'm not getting annoyed for no reason. You annoyed me, that's why I'm getting annoyed. You want to listen or you want to talk? If you can continue talking, I'm going to tell you to leave. I told you guys, it's not public school, it's not high school, it's not a pub. This is Shul Torah. For me, this is my life. If it's not your life, it's fine. But don't ruin it for everybody else. So, for me, it's very, very important to tell you the truth because I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again. I already know the truth. So that's why I do what I do. You're still trying to discover it. So if we're going to discover it together, it's best if you pay attention. Because It's not a matter of being right or being wrong. It's a matter of using your time wisely. Now, when somebody would tell me that maybe I should calm down, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that, I never understood why until I started learning Torah. Once you start learning Torah, you start understanding what's Hashem's perspective. What does Hashem think about anger? And how that anger could literally ruin your life. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that you just sit there and let people walk on you, step on you, and do whatever they want to you. No, it doesn't mean that. No one is telling you to just become the floor. But at the same token, to lose your mind, to lose your cool, to start breaking stuff, to just mess around, that could ruin your life. So the Ramban says that if you're going to speak to people, you have to make sure that you speak gently. Now, what does that mean, gently? Obviously, as you can see, I don't speak gently. If you understand gently as someone that's monotone, or someone that speaks to you in some voice like a Santa Claus, that's not me. And it's not a lot of rabbis. If you listen to, for example, the lectures of Rav Nisim Yagen, Alav Shalom, one of the greatest Mizakei Arabim that's lived in the last century, every single lecture, half the lecture he's screaming, the other half the lecture he's making people laugh. So he took you to Gehenom, but he made you laugh on the way there. The type of screams that he had, even the walls did Teshuva. The walls started doing Teshuva. They were so scared of his screaming. But he was Ish Kodesh. If you listen to the Shurim of Rav Mizrahi, Shichyeh, once in a while he raises his voice, you get the fear of God in you if you understand what he's saying. But he's also Ish Kodesh. If you listen to some of the Shurim by Rav Ovadia Alav Shalom, once in a while he raises his voice, you weren't sure if it was Moshe Rabbeinu speaking or it was him. You start getting scared. You're not really sure what's happening here. If you read the Torah, the last book of the Torah, the entire book of Deuteronomy, Sefer Dvarim, the entire book was comprised of 5 weeks of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. The whole time, the whole book, from the beginning of the book till the end of the book, he's giving Am Yisrael to them on the head. He's yelling at them and telling and rebuking them in a way that if you understand the words, you think twice before you want to sin. So speaking gently doesn't necessarily mean speaking in a low voice, speaking in a voice where people can barely hear you, whispering. It doesn't mean that. The wisest man of all time, his name was Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech says, "Me'oneh rach yashiv chama, udvar etzev ya'aleh af." He says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a distressing word stirs up anger. So Shlomo HaMelech is trying to explain to us what does it mean to speak gently. Who are you? Obviously, if you're speaking gently, you're speaking to someone. If you're speaking to yourself, then we have a different department for you. You're speaking to somebody. You're speaking to somebody, right? Who are you speaking to? So Shlomo HaMelech says, if you're speaking to somebody, and you're going to speak soft to them, you're going to give them a soft answer, that even if they have an inner anger, like a built-up anger from all types of problems they have in their life. They have problems with their marriage, they have problems with their money, they have problems with their job, they have problems with their kids, they have problems with all types of things. So they're not really angry at you, but as soon as you said something, they lost their mind. It's not you. Like sometimes you see somebody drives on the highway, and all of a sudden somebody cuts him off. That happens all the time. Some people, you cut them off, nothing happens. Baruch Hashem, most of the time it's that way. Once in a while, you see somebody got cut off on the highway, he loses his mind, he starts smashing into cars, cursing people, throwing stuff out of the window, like as if the guy murdered his family. Big deal, he cut you off. What's the big deal? Well, sometimes you see a guy go to a store, and they make all types of funny videos of this stuff. Where they see, a person comes to a store, and the store doesn't have what they want. They order coffee or something, And the store says, listen, we ran out of coffee, or we don't have this flavor, or whatever it is, and the person just simply loses their mind. If everyone could just move a few seats so you could let them sit. Move a few seats. You have plenty of seats in the middle. There you go. There you go. We're good? Ready? You want to sit? There's a couple of seats here, there's a couple of seats here. Fine. You can sit here. Right there. Right there. 10 price. Sometimes you see something small happen. Something small happen. Not a big deal. But a person loses their mind. That means that person, something was happening already before. It's not that the guy cut him off and that's why he lost his mind. It's not that the coffee's not available and that's why he lost his mind, started ruining the whole store. It's not that they didn't have the product or they ruined it and that's the reason why he's causing this mess. Meaning that person already had some wrath, some anger, some built up anger in his life that's been accumulated over a period of time. Could have been he had a fight with his wife 20 minutes before, and that's a fight after something happened to the kid, and that's a fight that happened to the kid that didn't have any money, and over a period of a few days, a lot of things built up, and eventually you came along, you said one word that wasn't exactly to his likings, and he just lost his mind. So it's not really your fault, but it happened. It happened. So Shlomo HaMelech says, if you speak to people in a way that's soft, even if he has some inner tension, some huge amount of anger, a lot of problems in his life, that tone that you're going to use with them, that language that you're going to use with them, will calm him down. What is it like? You ever see two guys trying to speed on the highway, and they're racing, and then sometimes you get to, one guy cuts the other guy off, he gets really, really upset. But then once in a while you see something different. You see the two guys, they're in a corner, and one guy, both of them are like, trying to get their point across, look at me, look at me, look at me type of mentality. Then all of a sudden, one of the guys says, tells the guy, go in front of me. And all of a sudden the other guy says, no, you go. All of a sudden they fall in love with each other. Why? Let me go. No, you go. No, come on. Oh, come on, you have the nicer car. You go. No, come on, me go before you, Your Majesty. You go. And all of a sudden they want to hug and kiss each other. What happened? 2 seconds ago you were wanting to kill each other. Who's going to go first? Now, as soon as the one guy said go, all of a sudden we're best friends. All of a sudden, we're like, no, I didn't want to go. I'm actually going to stay here all day until you go. Or sometimes you see people, they race to the door, but then one guy stops. He says, hey, Chavod, go. And the guy says, no, you go. All of a sudden, become best friends. What happened? What changed? The door didn't change. Destination didn't change. What changed? Kavod. You gave him a little bit of kavod. You gave him a little bit of respect. So whatever tension he had inside him, all of a sudden, all the air came out. Same thing when you deal with certain people. Sometimes you deal with somebody and he has so much tension, he has so much aggravation, he has so much animosity in his life that he's looking to lose his mind. But as soon as you give him one decent word, it doesn't have to be in a low voice per se, but rather it has to be something that's soothing, soft in a sense of soothing, something that's going to comfort him. You're going to give him a little bit of respect. You're going to give him something to make him smile. You're going to give him a little bit of attention. You're going to give him a little bit of you know what? You win. You can let him win. All of a sudden, all that animosity, all that anger, all the rage that he was about to come out, all of a sudden, gone. Dissipates like it's nothing, like it never existed. Many times the same thing works in marriage. Guy comes home, he has two options. One option is to do what a lot of stupid people do, which is, hey honey, what'd you cook? Why? You do that, your marriage is most likely going to be miserable, if it succeeds at all. Why? Because that pretty much tells your wife that all you care about is food. All you care about is yourself. Hey honey, what'd you cook? Meaning that he's only saying, hey honey, not because he cares about me. It's a formality to get to the food. Hey honey, I'm hungry, I want to eat. He's not asking me about my day. He's not asking me how I'm doing. He doesn't even take into consideration that I'm raising these kids that are climbing the walls. He's not taking into consideration that I have a woman's body that all the time is in pain, it's moving, it's this, it's that. Woman's body, Hashem Yachem. That's what we say every day. Thank you for not making me a woman. Why? It's very hard to be a woman. It's very hard to be a woman. That's why you have to kiss your mom's feet. That's why you have to kiss your wife's feet one day. Why? You know how hard it is to be a woman? Don't ask the transvestites. They just think they're women. You ask a woman that brings a human being to the world, you know what kind of power you have to bring a human being to the world? If you actually understood the biology, the anatomy of a human being, what happens to the woman's body when she's actually carrying the baby, in so many words, to us guys, what does it mean? The entire body breaks. Our entire body breaks. All the organs go in different places. And there's this baby that's like rocking the world over there. Eventually he comes out, but then everything is missing now. The liver's over here, the lungs are over here. So what do? So now it has to unbreak. It has to heal itself. You know how hard this is? You know how painful it is? That's why, Rabotai Karim, if you have a woman that tolerates you, and on top of it wants to bring you kids, you have to kiss her feet. Don't ask her what she cooked. Ask her how you doing. How are you doing? How are you? How was your day? Forget about the fact that you're hungry. Who cares if you're hungry? You want to be married? You want to be happy? Ask her how she's doing. Ask her how she's doing. And guess what? If you ask her how she's doing and you care how she's doing, not just ask her how she's doing because you heard it in the Shiur Torah. Oh yeah, the rabbi said to ask her how you doing. So how you doing? She's going to tell you, hey, here's the sandwich. Go away. Go, let's go down the Shiur. Don't be a robot. Ask her how she's doing because you care how she's doing. Why? Because then it doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter how she's doing. It doesn't matter that the kids were climbing the walls the whole day. It doesn't matter that our body hurts. It doesn't matter that our ears hurt. It doesn't matter that everything is difficult. It doesn't matter. Why? My husband cares how I'm doing. My husband cares how I'm doing. That's enough. That's enough to calm the whole day. All that tension she was building, because before you came, she was thinking in her mind, oh, I'm going to tell him what he did. I'm going to tell him what she did. I can't believe it. He didn't call me. He didn't write this. I don't know. She already has all the calculations of what she's going to tell you as soon as you get into the door. And you come in, instead of asking, what'd you cook? You're saying, honey, how are you doing? And you're ready to listen. All of a sudden, she's going to tell you how she's doing. She's going to take the opportunity to tell you. But the tension calmed down. Why? You care. You care. That already makes life worth it for her. But if you want to be like most divorced people, you can do what they did before they got divorced. Don't ask how she's doing. Don't care how she's doing. And just ask her how you're doing. Tell her about how hard your day was. Like that's going to help you in life. Oh, I can't believe, you're not going to believe what this customer did to me. She doesn't care. Why? Because the kid was much worse than your customer. The kid that's climbing the walls, the kid that's failing in school, all the other stuff is much, much worse than your customer. And she's been waiting all day to talk to you. And now all you care about is to tell her about you instead of her. She's going to feel like she's alone in this marriage. And that's not a good feeling. So now, huh?
So it's always got to be about her? Yes.
You want to be happy or want to be right?
She wouldn't be happy.
If you want to be happy in a marriage, you have to let the wife talk.
Yep.
You have to let the wife talk. The Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave 10 measures of speaking in the world. 9 of them were given to women, 1 to men. Women like to talk. But it also says that you cannot talk to the wife too much. Meaning, talk to the point and then go learn Torah. Then go do your vocation. I'm assuming we're all going to be learning Torah one day all the time. I'm assuming we're all going to be working and then learning. And then married. We're not going to waste our time watching TV and playing basketball all day. We're not going to be children the whole life. One day we're going to grow up. One day we're going to start learning seriously. One day we're going to take life seriously. So that means that you're going to have a schedule. Which means that you're not going to waste time. You have work, you work. After you finish work, you go home. You go home, you eat with the family, you act like a father for a little while, an hour, hour and a half, you learn a little bit, next day starts over. That's life. That's life. That's heaven. You don't think it's heaven right now because you haven't lived that life yet. You think that maybe go on vacation every weekend to some beach. That's heaven. Trust me, that's much closer to Gehenna. Much closer to Gehenna. Why? Because all the people that go to Cancun and to Bahamas and all those places, guess what they are? Alone. They're always looking for somebody there. They're all alone. And they're all looking for somebody. And they end up being alone, but they have a lot of pictures on Facebook of fun times. You want pictures on Facebook or you want pictures in Olam Haba? That's the question. So we have to ask ourselves. So now, Rabotai Yekarim, if you come home and you ask your wife how you're doing, and she talks to you a little bit, she tells you a little bit how she's doing, you talk a little bit, you communicate, you have a marriage, you have that already creates a relationship that's worth having. But sometimes, some of us are so stressed out because of the things that we deal with in life, whether it's school, or it's money, or it's business, or whatever it is, that instead of giving that soft answer, that soothing answer, that how you're doing, instead of that, we return a dvar etziv, a distressing word. What's a distressing word? What's a distressing word? Distressing word doesn't necessarily always mean like you're insulting somebody. Distressing word can sometimes mean you made a joke of what they said. She said something that's really important to her. He said something that's really important to him. And you said, no, what's the big deal? That's it. Sometimes I would have a shiur Torah, and you'd have a lot of people. One time we had a shiur at my house, and we had a nice group of guys. And one guy claimed to be religious. He was the only one that came there with the kippah. The rest of the people didn't come with the kippah. They had to get the kippah. He was the only one that came with the kippah. And he's the only one that got thrown out. You know why? Because he came there to make fun. He came there to make jokes. So everybody else came there to learn. Everybody else came there, talk about Moshe Rabbeinu, talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, talk about Torah, talk about something that's going to help life. He came there to make jokes. So every 5 minutes, he'd come up with a new joke. Oh, you hear about this? You know, the Arab and the Jew, and they're both on a plane. Every 5 minutes, he'd come up with a new joke. Every 5 minutes. So the Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah says that somebody that makes jokes in the middle of a shiur Torah, it's a very sad case. Why? Just the beginning of their punishment is to get tortured in this world, suffering in this world. Meaning, the real punishment is after this world. But he says just the beginning is here. Hashem has to torture them in this world. Why? Because if you are going to go to a shiur Torah, you're going to learn. You don't want to learn. You don't go to a shiur Torah. Now, if you're going to go to a shiur Torah, but you're going to make jokes, then what does that mean? Number one, it means you care less about the Torah. Number two, it means you care about yourself more than everybody else. Number three, you're ruining it for everyone. Meaning that no one else is going to be able to learn and get close to Hashem because of you. So Hashem says that deserves a special, unique punishment. So he says the jokesters, the clowns, the ones that want to make fun, those people have a special treatment from Hashem. And that treatment is not a good one. So even though sometimes you're going to see a person with a kippah or a person that claims to be religious, I told you last week and I tell you every week, religious is not necessarily always a look. Religious is behavior. So sometimes you could get somebody that has a little bit of tension in their life, but one small thing you say to them and they lose their mind. So Shlomo Melech says here, if the person has a lot of tension in their life, a lot of tension, a lot of problems, but you say something good, everything comes out. But someone that has a little bit of tension, just a little bit, something just small, not a lot. Like he just has, I don't know, he got a flat tire 3 weeks ago, and he just had to pay the bill now. Like, not a big deal. But that person that has a little bit of tension in their life, you make fun of them, you do something that's inappropriate for them, it's just a little bit. Make whatever they said into something that's insignificant, they'll blow up on you. So that's what the Ramban is trying to tell us here. If you speak gently, you'll be saved from this anger. Not only saved from the anger of your own anger, but the anger of other people. How are you treating other people? Now, most people think, when they think of, let's say, the tzaddikim, like the Chafetz Chaim, most people think this is some nice old man that never got mad in his life, was probably born with the payas already and the hat and the beard already. That's what we visualize. Moshe Rabbeinu was born perfect. We visualize Chafetz Chaim was born perfect. We visualize the tzaddikim, they never got mad in their life. That's what we visualize. That's the mistake. Mistake is to think that they were born this way. The truth is, Rabotai, when they speak about themselves, they tell you exactly who they are. And the Chafetz Chaim says that it's a very, very big mistake to think that a tzaddik is actually born that way. He says he himself, the Chafetz Chaim, himself had to fight anger his whole life. Now, no one actually ever saw him angry. Thank God to them. But he had to fight it. Every night, one of his students would follow him for a few weeks. Want to see what the Chafetz Chaim is doing. He says he couldn't believe it. Every night, Chafetz Chaim, after everybody went to sleep, after everybody else going to do their life, Chafetz Chaim goes and starts praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with tears. Why is he praying to Hashem? Hashem, give me parnasah tovah, like 99% of people want. Hashem, give me this. Hashem, give me that. Most people would pray to Hashem. What do they pray to Hashem? 99% of people pray for money. The other one pray for a business that's going to make the money. Some people are asking for a wife that has money already, or a husband that has money. Somehow it's always related to money. What is the Chafetz Chaim praying for? Chafetz Chaim in the middle of the night, he's crying hysterical to Hashem with tears. Hashem, please, please help me overcome my anger. Now, no one saw him angry, but he knows what's anger and what's not anger. He says, Hashem, please help me. Please help me never get angry. Why? The difference between us and the tzaddikim is that they understand what anger is and what it can do to a person. First, we see that the Gemara says that anyone, Gemara Masechet Pesachim, Resh Lakish says, anyone that gets angry, if he was wise, his wisdom escapes him. He becomes stupid. All the things that he learned his whole life, forgets. For that moment, it may come back to him, but he forgets it. Even if it's Torah, even if he was the best rabbi in the world, even if he learned the entire Torah by heart, the moment he's angry, he forgets it. If he was a prophet, meaning it was somebody that speaks to Hashem, his prophecy is gone. Where do we learn both of these from? Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu had a couple of moments of weakness that Torah talks about. Twice we see Moshe Rabbeinu got angry. Rightly so. Am Yisrael was very annoying. If I was Moshe Rabbeinu, I would probably kill all of them. That's why I'm not Moshe Rabbeinu. Reality is Moshe Rabbeinu had a bunch of people complain to him all day. All day he's giving them what they want and they complain anyway. This week's parasha, what did they complain about? They were getting food from heaven. Not figuratively speaking. Literally. There was food, any flavor you want. As much as you need to eat, as much as you want to eat, coming down to you from heaven, literally. You want it to taste like a steak, it tastes like a steak. You want it to taste like ice cream, it tastes like ice cream. You want it to taste like a ice cream and steak, it tastes like ice cream and steak. You change your mind in the middle of the bite, it changes the mind also. That's the man. The man was this. The man would literally taste however you want it to taste, when you want it to taste. That's how magical the man was. So imagine having something that you don't have to cook anymore. And not only that, you don't have to work. The food arrives at your house. Right to your door. What does Am Yisrael do in this week's parasha? They complain about the man. It's like, we want some chicken. We want some steak. Yeah, but you have man. Man tastes like steak. No, we need something else. What did you bring us here to starve us? That doesn't tell Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu brought them food from heaven, and they complained to Moshe Rabbeinu. What? It was better. I remember we were in Egypt. They gave us some fish over there, some gefilte fish. They gave us some Moroccan fish. It was harif, nice and spicy. You know, in Egypt, old times. Why did you bring us to the desert to starve us, to kill us? Imagine such a people. You're giving them food, comes right to their house without even working. They're comparing what you're giving to them, the best food in the world from heaven. Doesn't make you fat. You don't have to go to the bathroom. It all goes into your blood system. What do they complain? No, we want some McDonald's. We want some McDonald's from Egypt where we were slaves. They compare the two. Who wouldn't get angry? So Moshe Rabbeinu, when he got angry at Am Yisrael, he was right. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not like it. And a couple of times that it says in the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu got upset at Am Yisrael, all of the wisdom that he had, all of the Torah that he had, he forgot it. The prophecy, the communication that he had with Hashem, disconnected. Had to start all over again. Rabotai, even though none of us are prophets or the sons of prophets or daughters of prophets, our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu also gets affected by anger. Now, sometimes it's clear what happens. When you get angry, you say something stupid, you offend somebody, and then you regret it 5 minutes later, but the damage has already been done. That, you don't need to be a genius to realize it. But there's also a physical way that you affect yourself. Now, if any of you study a little bit of science in your life, you may have heard of a Japanese scientist by the name of Dr. Emoto. Dr. Masaru Emoto. Dr. Masaru Emoto is a scientist that wanted to see what kind of effect do we have, do our words have on the environment. So he took little petri dishes, little plastic dishes, and filled them up with water. He took one of them and he said nice things to the water. You're beautiful water, you're nice water, you're real clean, you look delicious, all types of nice things. Then the other one, he cursed it out. He cursed, said curses to the thing. Curse. Angry. I hate you, water. I can't believe you're water. You should be Coca-Cola. Cursing it out. Now you would think, well, it's water. It's still, you look at the water at the end, it's still water. Nothing changes, still water. But if you look at things under a microscope, then you see difference. Now if you look at the way the water looks after it was frozen, did anybody ever see pictures of snowflakes on the internet? Snowflakes, you ever see snowflakes? Few beautiful things about snowflakes, so you should know. Number one, there's no two snowflakes that are the same. It's like fingerprints. Fingerprints, there's no two fingerprints in the world that are the same. Snowflakes, as many trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions to the infinite power, there's no two snowflakes that are the same. Now this may not mean so much to you until you see what a snowflake actually looks like. The design of a snowflake is absolutely beautiful. Second little cute secret, scientific secret about snowflakes, they all have Magen David in them. They all have Magen David in them. You just have to look, you'll see Magen David in every single one. Go look on the internet while I'm talking. You'll see Magen David in a snowflake. Now, snowflakes are beautiful. Very symmetrical. You see there's a designer behind it. Icicles, when you take water and you freeze it, looks like snowflakes. So, as you'll see from this book, Dr. Imoto took a picture of the water after he said nice things to it, and it looked like beautiful snowflakes. I'll pass this around, you can see it after. Little beautiful snowflakes. You see this was literally, has a little icicles on the side, looks like a diamond over here, all beautiful little things. But then he looked, and under the microscope, same water that looks clear, doesn't like change color. Same water, frozen, but he cursed at it. And this is what it looks like. It looks black. Looks like a disease. Looks like cancer. This is what cancer looks like, by the way. Shem Yachem. It looks disgusting. It looks like something you don't want to put into your body. Now, another scientist, there was a student in Bar Ilan University, wanted to take this test to a next level. His name was Tomer Ebiav, Rabiav, and he decided that he wants to see what happens to other things. So he took 3 beans. 3 beans. And he would water the beans every day. And 1 bean, he would say nice things to it. You're a beautiful bean. I love you. You look cute. You're a nice little bean today. All nice things. Compliments. Like you're supposed to say to your wife or your husband. Second bean, he'd abuse it. You're an ugly bean. You should have been an apple. You should have been this. You're the worst bean in the world. I hate you. And the third bean, he would read Tehillim to it. He'd read Psalms. Not only say nice things, but he'd read Psukim from the Torah. After a little while, he recorded the pictures of how each one of them progressed. The bean that he spoke nice things to grew and turned into a nice little plant. The bean that he said Tehillim, said Psalms to, grew 5 times the size. Grew drastically bigger. The bean that he cursed at died. Didn't grow at all. Now, you can all try this at home if you want. It's a simple experiment you can take and record it and put it on the internet and show people. Why? Why am I teaching you this? You have to think about it this way. If the impact of our words, the impact of curses, the impact of blessings has such an effect on the exterior world, if you say nice things to water, it looks nice, it stays nice. And if you say ugly things, it looks ugly, it becomes ugly. Guess what? If your words affect the exterior that way, what do you think it's doing to the interior when you are made of 99% water? The Chachamim tell us that even if HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided on Rosh Hashanah that he wants to give you 70 years of blessings, he decides on Rosh Hashanah, David, this year is going to be your year, and for the next 70 years I'm going to give you lots of money, lots of this, lots of good stuff. Chachamim say, one time you curse can not only lose that blessing, but can turn it into 70 years of curses. 70 years of curses, one curse. Why? because how you've affected the world. And the Kabbalah tells us that every single time you say something, you don't see the words, but those words go somewhere. That word travels in the world. Eventually, that word goes into something. It goes into a fruit, goes into a vegetable, goes into something. Somebody's going to eat that fruit. That minute he eats it, he wants to do what you did. If you did a blessing, he wants to do a blessing. If you made a curse, he's going to curse. Guess what? Both of you get punished. Which means, Rabotai, that our words, whether good or bad, have an impact. Have a very, very big impact. More than we see. Now, psychologically speaking, anger is three parts of it. There's anger that you have thought. There's anger you speak. And there's action. Now, to get to a point of not even getting angry mentally, you simply have to be dead. Why? Because things will make you angry in the world. Things happen. You have to get to such a level. If you're going to get to a level of never getting angry, even mentally, you have to literally get to a level of like a dead person. Meaning, it's impossible. But speaking-wise is very possible. To not exercise your anger and speak with an angry tone and curse and yell and insult and make fun, that is a much easier thing to do if you work on it. The easiest thing to do, the easiest thing to overcome, is exercising anger was supposed to be action. Meaning people that get angry to the extent where they do something. They hit somebody, they break something. Now, in the regular secular world today, you're going to see the exact opposite of what I'm teaching you. You're going to go to big companies, you're going to go to Google and Microsoft and all these big companies, and they're going to tell you, yeah, we have a big campus, and part of the campus is to help our employees, and part of the way we help our employees is with psychological help, and part of the way that we help them psychologically is we give them an angry room. What's an angry room? An angry room is you go into the room and you yell your lungs out about all the frustration you had all day. And they figured that if you go into this angry room and you yell, look as loud as you want, that's going to calm you down. Which is exactly what we just said. Exactly the opposite of what we just said. Why? If you exercise your anger,
you get more angry.
You get more angry. You get more angry. Not only do you get more angry, you start thinking that it's okay to be angry. You start desiring anger. You start connecting to anger, and you start justifying anger. Same concept if they tell you, listen, why don't you, if you have a lot of anger, go and start, do exercise. Become a boxer, start hitting a punching bag. Hit a punching bag every day, take out all your anger, go do some MMA, beat the heck out of somebody that didn't do anything to you, and that's going to relieve your anger. It's going to relieve your anger. You're going to have a black eye, he's going to have a black eye, but you're not going to be angry anymore. Guess what? You're going to be a lot more angry. You're going to be a lot more angry as a result of it. The only way to overcome anger is with wisdom. What's wisdom? Wisdom is Torah. Torah tells us that in order for us to overcome anger, we simply have to understand what it means to be angry. What actually happens as a result of anger. First and foremost, we're going to go over more details of this next week. But first and foremost, the Gemara Masechet Shabbat, page 105b, says, if a person at his moment of anger takes money and throws it in the air, takes a utensil of some kind, takes a pen, takes a pencil, takes a bat, takes a rock, takes a remote control, a phone, and throws it, in the eyes of Hashem, and in your eyes, he has to be considered as if he's 100% an idol worshiper. Now Now you're going to say, wait a minute, what does idol worshipping have to do with him breaking a phone? I just broke a phone on the way here. That makes me an idol worshiper? So here's what it says.
The bathroom's open just for everybody to
Thank you. I guess it was closed. What could I do about it? Okay, you have to go to the bathroom, not talk. Bathroom doesn't require talking. Huh? So, Torah says if somebody gets angry and he throws something, they're considered an idol worshiper. Somebody saw one of my videos and he didn't like it. Why? I spoke about how some of these Chabadniks today have lost their mind. There's a lot of Chabadniks that are tzaddikim, a lot of people from Chabad that are tzaddikim, but there's a bunch of them that are crazy. Why? They've idolized the Rebbe. They've turned the Rebbe into God. They call him Mashiach, they call him God, they call him all types of things. They lost their mind. Now, we made a video about this to show how some of them are literally praying to the Rebbe instead of praying to God. So, this guy sent me an email, and he says, no, you don't understand, the Rebbe was holy. I never said the Rebbe wasn't holy. I talk about the Rebbe all the time in a positive way. I'm saying you guys are crazy. I'm not saying any of the Rebbe's are anything. He's perfect. You guys have the problem. So, no, but you don't understand, but you also said in a, in a shiur, this and this, and you have to understand, the Rebbe was very holy, and one time somebody told him that he was really upset because the Rebbe's wife wasn't wearing a wig. So, the Rebbe got upset and broke the pencil and said, no, that's not right. So I responded, I said, I'm sorry, your story is fake. In order for me to believe your story, I have to believe that the Rebbe is an idol worshiper. Why? Because the Torah says, if somebody gets angry and breaks something, the Torah says he's an idol worshiper. So, unless you think the Rebbe was an idol worshiper, you cannot believe the story. So take the story, put it in the garbage. Meaning it's very, very important to know what's real and what's not real. A lot of stories people say in people's names, and they add different details, and it ruins the story. Truth is, why is somebody that breaks something considered in the eyes of Hashem as an idol worshiper? Because the Gemara continues and says, if he lets his anger become expressed physically to such an extent, that means he's become one of the employees, one of the servants of the Yetzer Hara. And today the Yetzer Hara tells him to break something. Tomorrow the Yetzer Hara is going to tell him to break something else. The next day he's going to tell him to do something else. And it's only a matter of time before the Yetzer Hara is going to tell him to go worship JCPenney. It's only a matter of time before the Yetzer Hara tells him to go worship Buddha. It's only a matter of time before the Yetzer Hara takes him to the worst place on earth, to some church. It's only a matter of time. If he's already following the Yetzer Hara, it's only a matter of time before he gets worse. So, if a person is going to allow their anger to take such control of their life, they could lose themselves in such a big way that they could simply lose the balance of life. Now, the Reshit Chochmah, about 500 years ago, wrote a couple of tools that you can use to start doing anger exercises. First, he says, if you have some anger problems, which everybody has to some extent, and you want to work on it, because it's very valuable to work on it, take a certain amount of money and know, okay, every time I get angry and I express myself with anger, not if I get angry mentally, but I get angry and I curse. I get angry and I break something. That money goes into a tzedakah box. Now make sure that it's enough money that it hurts. Why? Because then you can think twice. After the second, third time you put this money in the tzedakah box, you can think twice before you want to get angry, express your anger. Second thing is, he says, if you are around somebody that's angry, don't look at them. Why? Torah says you're not allowed to look at the face of a rasha. someone that's expressing their anger is considered a rasha. Now, the Chachamim said that if a person wants to get married, wants to find a wife, they cannot look at the bank account of the person and think this is going to make him a good husband or a good wife. They cannot look at the looks of this person and determine this is a good husband or a good wife. They have to look at the character traits of the person. And the Chidah says that when a young man is looking to find a wife, he should try to find a wife that doesn't get angry easily. Why? If he marries a woman that gets angry very easily, as soon as you say one thing off, one thing not to her likings, she doesn't want to talk to you for 3 days. As soon as you say one thing that's not exactly her cup of tea, she starts yelling at you like you're a, Hamas. He says, don't marry such a person. Why? If he marries such an angry person, then he'll be considered as if he's attached to an idol. He'll be attached. Why? Because anger is idolatry. And if she's constantly angry all the time, he'll be attached to idolatry. To such an extent, the Torah looks at anger in such a negative way. Now, how does anger actually affect us in our day-to-day life? What's the risk? Let's say, for example, somebody says, listen, the Torah sounds nice. It'll be nice not to have anger, but I was born this way. I am this way. So let's look at how it impacts a person that wants to have kids, that is trying to build a life. Now, all of you have heard your parents tell you some things in your life at some point that you didn't always obey. You didn't always listen to what they said. Part of the reason that we don't listen to our parents is not because we don't care about our parents, not because we don't like our parents, but because sometimes we view our parents as hypocrites. Subconsciously, we view our parents as hypocrites. Why? Everybody knows that to be angry is not a good thing. Everybody knows. So, if a kid sees his parent express his anger in a terrible way, break something, yell, scream, insult the mom insults the father, the two parents are not smart enough to realize they're never supposed to argue in front of the kids, that happens in many houses. Not on purpose, it just happens because they don't think twice. They didn't read the Iggeret HaRamban. They learned Torah their whole life, and sometimes they did, but they forgot, or they didn't pay attention, whatever the case may be. Life happens. Parents fight in front of the kids. The little kid, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, sees the parents do this. He knows this is wrong. He doesn't have to be a genius. He knows that it's not nice that Abba said this to Ima. It's not nice that Ima said that to Abba. It's definitely not nice that Ima gave Abba a nice righty. Definitely not nice. And when Abba gave her back one, ooh, that was terrible. All that stuff is not nice. All that stuff is wrong. But they still did it. So what happens? At some point, the Abba and the Ima are going to tell the kid, son, do this. And the son says, okay. He doesn't do it. And later on, says, listen, son, I told you to do it. Yeah, I didn't do it. Why not? I told you to do it. He goes, no, I didn't do it. He goes, yeah, but that's the right thing to do. I know it's the right thing to do, but I didn't do it. Why not? You also didn't do the right thing. You also didn't do the right thing. What are you talking about, do the right thing? Remember 3 months ago when the kid's never going to have a conversation like this, like Abba, but that's what I'm telling you what happens in the kid's mind, subconsciously. The parents don't realize the kids are not listening to them because the parents are not listening to their own advice. They're telling the kids to do the right thing when they themselves are not doing the right thing. So if you're constantly going to express your anger, you have to realize that you're not only going to teach your kids that anger is okay, but you're also going to teach your kids that doing whatever you want is okay. Expressing yourself whatever way you want is okay. Doing the wrong thing, even though it's wrong, is okay. So when you ask your kid, why didn't you do this and this? The answer subconsciously is really because you're the same. I'm doing what you did. Which means, Abotai, that if you want to have good kids, you have to be good first. And that's why when a couple came to Rav Ovadia with a brand new baby, and they told him, Kvod Rav, please give us a blessing that we have a good kid, and he grows up to be a tzaddik. Rav Ovadia tells them, you're 20 years late. He goes, no, Kvod Rav, he was just born, he's a brand new baby. They thought maybe the Rav wasn't able to see or something. He goes, no, he was born right now. He says, yeah, they're 20 years late. How are we 20 years late? He was just born. Because you have to educate yourself first. You had to be good first. Now that you're starting late, you can still do something about it, but you're late. If you, most of you are not married, you want to have a good marriage, you want to have good kids, you want to have a good life, it starts with you. If you educate yourself and you take life seriously, you'll have a good life that's worth living. If you take life as is, do whatever you want, and think that there's no consequences for it, I promise you, you'll end up an old man that's seriously regretting that he didn't take advantage of it. Now, the Chafetz Chaim says that in order to overcome anger, it's not simply something that you can just do just by learning it in a shiur. A person needs to understand the value. How bad is it in the eyes of Hashem? Once a person understands that Hashem runs the world, to such an extent that he literally draws his fingerprint on every snowflake, to such an extent that he puts his fingerprint on every DNA, to such an extent that he puts his fingerprint on every little piece of creation, meaning he cares about everything, and everything is designed, everything is with wisdom, and he tells you that anger is disgusting to him. A person needs to know, okay, this is something I need to get rid of. This is a cancer I have in my life. How do I get rid of this? What do I need to do? Now remember I told you, in order to overcome anger mentally, a person literally needs to be dead. To do it with speech-wise, never get angry, speaking angry, he needs to simply work on himself really hard. But the easiest one to stop is the stuff that we do physically. Break stuff and things of that nature. But there was a tzaddik by the name of Rav Moshe Feinstein, in just the previous generation, that at the age of 24, he went to the doctor and they told him, we're sorry, you only have 2 months to live. And the other people there said, why 2 months? How did you doctors decide that he only has 2 months to live? He says, well, his heart is so weak. His heart is so weak that we give it a maximum of 2 months that someone is going to make him angry. Someone's going to make him upset. And the minute he gets upset, he'll die. His heart's not strong enough to handle being upset. Just a weak heart. So we figured that now that everybody knows that he has a weak heart, probably no one's going to bother him. No one's going to make him upset. Everyone's going to, tread carefully like they're walking on eggshells. But the reality is life is going to happen. So we're estimating that even with everybody's efforts, even if he lives in a little, bottle of some kind, some type of, balloon, something's going to happen, it's going to make him upset. So we figured 2 months maximum. Maybe less. Well, as you would have it, anyone that knows a little bit about Rav Moshe Feinstein, Alav Shalom, he not only passed the age of 24, he lived a long life. Eventually the doctors died that diagnosed the problem. Eventually the nurses died. Eventually the friends that were there also died. Everybody died except Rav Moshe Feinstein. He lived, past 100 years old. Some say 110, some say 105. Nobody knows, because in Judaism, the tzaddikim, you stop counting at 100. Like a Rav Kaduri, Alav Shalom, everybody says he was 100 years old for at least 20 years. At least 20 years he was 100 years old. Fine, my Rav says, I remember that he was 100 years old when I first, 5 years old, he was 100 years old. He was 100 years for years. Harav Moshe Feinstein, 100 years old for years. No one knows. Somebody says 105, 110, no one really knows. How? So they asked him, Kvod Harav, at 95 years old, this Talmidim asked him, Kvod Harav, we heard the story. Is it a true story? He says, it's a true story. They told you you're not going to live past 24. He said, no, I'm not going to live past 2 months. So how? How did you do it? How did you live so many years? He says, everything that happens in the world, people take it in a certain way. You say something to somebody, people take it personally. You say something to somebody, people take it emotionally. You say something to somebody, people do a lot of calculations. Me, I only let it get to my button. I never let it pass the button. Meaning, I look, yes, no, allowed, not allowed, the will of Hashem, against Hashem, that's it. People would come to Rav Moshe Feinstein before the Rav. They just wrote a bunch of posts against you, publicizing a bad name against you, publicly insulting a Talmid Chacham, publicly insulting the biggest rabbi in the world. What should we do for the Rav? Rav Moshe Feinstein, with a calm demeanor, say, oh, tell him it's not allowed. And people will try to rile him up. There's always the guy that wants fire. No, for the Rav, they wrote your halacha, but the opposite. In your name. You wrote allowed, they wrote in your name, not allowed. Tell them, I said it's allowed. Tell them I said it's not allowed. And so on and so forth. You just never let it bother him. Why? Not that it didn't bother him per se, that he wasn't human. But he simply understood the value of anger, and even more importantly, the value of overcoming it. For him, it was not only spiritually speaking, but also physically. For us, it's the same. For us, it's the same. It's no different. It's just that when a person thinks about things this way, it's a little easier to know that your life is on the line. For us, we have to constantly be reminded. Now, the common thing that happens when people learn Torah together, you'll see, especially when they learn seriously, you see the Talmidei Chachamim, they raise their voice, they get into it, and sometimes it looks like they're very angry. How do you explain that? Torah says, Torah I chayenu. The Torah, that's our life. What does it mean? It means that when you see two people learning Torah seriously together, and you see that one disagrees with the other, he got to this conclusion, his chavruta got to the other conclusion, and they go back and forth. If they really care about the Torah, to them, Torah is their life, which means that when you disagree with what I'm saying, with my conclusion, what are you really saying? You're trying to destroy my conclusion. You're trying to destroy my Torah. You're trying to destroy my life. So of course I'm going to be heated about it. I'm not angry at you per se. I'm angry at this argument. I'm fighting the argument because you're fighting for the emet. You're fighting for the truth. Now how valuable is the emet in the Torah? In this week's parasha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Am Yisrael that we have to go into the desert, we have to take our leaders to lead us, and he tells who's the leader of each tribe and so on. Now it starts with Bnei Yehuda. This is Bnei Yehuda berishona letzivotav, ועל צבאו נחשון בן עמינדב, ועל צבא מטה בן יששכר, נתנאל בן צוהר, ועל צבא מטה בן זבולון, אליאב בן חילון. So he says the three tribes that are going to lead everybody else is Nachshon ben Aminadav of the tribe of Yehuda. Then you have the tribe of Issachar, and then you have the tribe of Zvulun. Why did Hashem pick out of all the tribes that we have, why did he pick these three tribes? Yehuda represented Emet. Yehuda represented Emet. Zvulun represented the Torah, And Issachar represented the backing of the Torah, the finance of Torah. Why was Yehuda representing Emet? Because Yehuda himself was tested. When him and Tamar were intimate, he didn't realize that Tamar was Tamar. He thought that she was somebody else. And when it was exposed, he had the opportunity to hide it because it was a shame to him of what happened. But he stood up for the Emet and he admitted that he did what he did. He admitted that he did what he did, even though it's going to bring him embarrassment, even though it might have brought him a death penalty. Years later, his descendant, Nachshon, that led the tribe, was also heading Am Yisrael at Yam Suf, at the Sea of Reeds. Now, when we left Egypt, we didn't exactly know where we were going. But when we got to the Sea of Reeds, we saw that in front of us was a huge ocean. No one knew how to swim. We've spent the last 200 years being slaves. Behind us were the Egyptians. Millions and millions of Egyptians came to kill us. On the right and left was the desert. And the Midrash says that the desert was full of huge snakes and scorpions. The snakes were similar to the size of dinosaurs. Huge snakes that would eat humans alive without too much to think about. So we knew we couldn't survive in a desert. We couldn't survive going back to the Egyptians. And we couldn't go forward because there was an ocean. Nachshon did what's called a kal v'chomer. He did an accounting in his head and he realized, wait a minute. If Hashem took us out of Egypt with all of these miracles, He definitely didn't take us out of Egypt just to go back. So going back to Egypt doesn't make any sense. He didn't take us out of Egypt for us to be eaten by anacondas. So it's definitely going to the right or left doesn't make any sense. The only one that could possibly make sense is to go into the ocean. What about the fact? What about the fact that nobody knows how to swim? He says that's the accounting for Hashem. How we're going to actually succeed here, that's Hashem's problem. My problem is to look for the truth. Look for what's emet. Emet, if you notice, the word emet means that emet has to be emet, emet has to be true from beginning to end. A lie can be 99% truth with 1% lie. 1% lie makes it 100% false. The whole thing's a lie. But emet, in order for something to be true, the whole thing has to be true. So the word emet is Aleph, Mem, Taf. Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. Taf is the last letter of the alphabet. And Mem is the middle letter of the alphabet. Which we see here, that even the structure of the words in the Hebrew language itself makes sense. Itself is created with divine intellect behind it. And that's not just words like in English or Chinese or other man-made languages that you just make up words and they decide that something's going to be called telephone. Just because somebody decided to call it telephone. So Nachshon ben Aminadav decided that the only place that the emet exists is by going forward. Even though there was an ocean, even though it required a huge amount of bitachon and emunah in Hashem, he went forward. And for that made him a leader to such an extent that the Mashiach comes from him. So he not only led at Yam Suf, but he continued leading in this week's parasha Ba'alotecha. And a person that stands for the truth, in the eyes of Hashem, that's number one. Because if he stands for the truth, if she stands for the truth, sky's the limit. Second one is the tribe of Issachar. Why? These are the people that dedicate their entire life to just learning. The Avachim, people that are in the kollel all day, all night, they're learning. Now even though they also stand for the truth, they're not like Yehuda. Why? Yehuda fights for the truth, outside. He goes and fights in the name of Hashem. Issachar learns. He learns, he fights for the truth, but in a different capacity. You would think that, okay, you have the Torah, you have the Emet, Next, you should probably have, I don't know, something else. You should have, what do we have? We have the people that invest into the Torah. Zvulun. The people that invest into the Torah, they're considered number 3 behind, in front of everybody else, in front of all of the other tribes. Why? Someone that invests into the Torah, works and ends up investing in Torah, it's considered as if his job is learning Torah. Someone that goes works, builds buildings, someone that goes and works and sells stocks, someone that goes works and makes money in one way or another, legally, ethically, and so on. And then he takes that money and he makes sure to take that money and publicize Torah with it. Of course, he pays his expenses, she pays her expenses, they do what they need to do to live life. But they're not trying to build some major 401k and buy 15 buildings just to show off that their name is on every avenue. They make sure that they utilize their money primarily to publicize Hashem's name. Such a person, in the eyes of Hashem, it's as if he's learning Torah all day. Why? Because what is he working for? He's working to publicize Torah. If you're working to publicize Torah, if you're working to help people do Teshuva, if you're working to help people learn Torah, that means that your work is the same thing as learning Torah. That's why you're third on the list. That's why you're third on the list. Now, regardless of where somebody's on the list, first, second, third, or after, if a person wants to continue staying at that position, at that capacity, at that level of significance in the eyes of Hashem, that means that he has to work on himself. He has to work on his anger, he has to work on his character traits, he has to work on everything and anything that has to do with improving his standing in the world, morally, spiritually, and the only way to do that is by learning Torah on a regular basis. If a person takes Torah seriously, starts learning every day, starts with a little bit, increases over time, starts applying things, increases over time. In the beginning, modesty was difficult for her. After a while, modesty becomes a little easier. Why? Because if every day you get a little bit, another drip of spiritual infusion, spiritual Torah, every day your neshama is going to be fixed. Every day your neshama is going to want more. Every day your neshama is going to want to fulfill what you're doing. Because unless you're a faker, you're going to want to do what you're, what you like. And if you're listening to Torah, eventually you're going to fall in love with the Torah. Especially if you start applying it. But what could ruin all of it? A person that learns Torah but doesn't work on themselves as far as ethically. Meaning that a person learns Torah but continues to behave the whatever they want. Such a person, even if they learn Torah all day and all night, you're not allowed to learn from them. Why? Because that's a hypocrite. That's someone that learns Torah but not to fulfill it, just because he's learning it theoretically. I know some people that have been going to Shiur Torah for 20 years. Shiur Torah 20 years. And 20 years, nothing changed. They go to Shiur Torah 20 years. 20 years ago they started, they kept Shabbat. They kept Shabbat, they kept Kashrut. 20 years later, it's still Shabbat, Kashrut. That's it. Nothing changed. 20 years. Nothing changed. Everything else that was missing 20 years ago, still missing today. And this is very common. It's not just young people. They start young, they end up old, but it's still the same exact person. They start the Shiur Torah, something moves them, they do it, but then after that they go on neutral. You know how you're in a car in neutral, and it just moves a little bit at a time? That's how they are spiritually. For 20 years they're on neutral. Because they figured they did something big. They started keeping Shabbat, they started keeping Ta'at Mishpacha, they started keeping Kashrut, they did something that was big for them, and then they figured, okay, that's enough. Which means that they did not work on themselves in any other way over the next 20 years. A person like that wasted a lot of time. Why? Because even their learning will not be considered as learning. Simply because they're not applying it. A person that learned without an intention to apply the Torah, there's some very, very strong language against such a person in the world. The Torah speaks very unfavorably against such a person. To such an extent, the Chachamim say, a person that learns Torah without an intention to fulfill it it was better off if he died before he came to the world. Why? That's a person that's just wasting his life. It was better off if he died before he came to the world. Why? Because at least he wouldn't have all these extra sins that he lived here for an extra 70, 80 years in this world. Meaning that if you're going to be coming to a Shul Torah, if you're going to be learning Torah, it's not just to learn Torah theoretically, it's not just to learn Torah mentally, it's not just for the sake of enjoying things, it's for the sake of applying it. It's for the sake of taking some of the things you learn and see, okay, how can I take this and apply it to my day-to-day life? That's the whole purpose of this letter. Where the Ramban says, if we're going to apply this, each word of this letter, we can get very, very far. If we don't apply this letter, then the level of the depth of negativity that we can get ourselves is much worse than we can imagine. And I'll finish with one example, and then you guys can ask whatever questions you want. The Gemara says in Masechet Gitin, how bad is a angry husband viewed in the Torah? Someone's an angry husband. Like, okay, anger is no good, we get it. But the guy gets angry once in a while. How bad is it? It's an idol worshiper. Okay, idol worshiper, but really, can you give me an example? Like, okay, it's not like there's every time the guy gets angry, he throws a remote control against the wall, there's like some cloud that draws up, you're an idol worshiper. It doesn't say that. Show us a real example in real life. So Gemara says someone that has accustomed his household to his anger, where his kids, his wife, his household is scared of him, will end up committing the 3 worst possible sins in the Torah. What are the 3 worst possible sins in the Torah? Gilui arayot, shfichut damim, vechilul Shabbat. Idolatry. How? I mean, the guy got angry, he took his phone, threw it against the wall. What does that have to do with a sex crime? Gilui arayot. Raping a woman. Being with his sister. Being with his mother. That's gilui arayot. Wasting seed. That's gilui arayot. It's a sex crime. Torah says it's better off you die and not make a sex crime. Sex crime is not just illegal sex according to the law. Sex crimes are even things that are not illegal. For example, for men, to waste seed is considered gilui arayot. For men and for women, for them to be intimate without the woman being going to a mikveh, without the woman being Torah, being pure, it's gilui arayot. It's actually worse for a man to be with his wife that's impure, that didn't go to the mikveh, than to be with his own mother. Now logically this doesn't make sense to our human brain. What do you mean? Mother? Well, you see, how do we determine this? What's the punishment for this? What's the punishment for this? We see that the punishment for being with a nidah, a woman that did not go to the mikveh, which means if she's single, you never got married, she's nidah. That means the punishment for that is much worse than incest, according to the Torah. That's how bad it is. Now in our minds, what do you want? You're crazy. I'm not crazy. Talk to Hashem. If you're crazy, call Hashem crazy. I wouldn't recommend it though. Because when he calls you back, it doesn't say crazy back. It doesn't go back and forth. So Torah says someone that accustomed his home to anger is going to commit this crime of gilui arayot. If that's not enough, he's also going to commit the crime of shfichut damim. What's shfichut damim? Murder. Why, just because somebody's angry, he's going to kill somebody? He says yes. And worse yet, he's going to be considered an idol worshiper. How idol worshiper? Not just idol worshiper because of the anger, idol worshiper in the sense that he's going to violate Shabbat. So the Gemara says, how is this all possible? Just by taking something and breaking it. Just by yelling in the house. Just by this, just by that. So the Gemara says, if a man is constantly angry, then his household will be scared of him. And what ends up happening, one day his wife, his little tzadikah wife, she wants to go to the mikveh. It's time to go to the mikveh. And something happens, the kids, sometimes they drive you a little crazy. Work drives you a little crazy. Life drives you a little crazy. So what happens? You run late. So she runs late, and she gets to the mikveh exactly 5 minutes too late. Exactly 5 minutes after the woman closed it. 5 minutes after the woman closed it. Which means she can't go to the mikveh. Now she's so scared of her husband, because she knows if she comes home, she tells her husband, honey, I didn't go to the mikveh, he can't touch her. Now he hasn't touched her already in a few weeks. And she knows he's going to lose his mind. She's too scared. She comes home without going to the mikveh. She says, honey, so everything okay? Oh, perfect. Perfect. Why? She's too scared to tell him the truth. And guess what? They're going to be together that night. It's considered Gilui Arayot. He goes up to Shamayim. Says, you went with a nidah, you rasha. You went with a nidah. Says, no, what are you talking about? My wife went to the mikveh. She didn't go to the mikveh. She was too scared to tell you the truth. She didn't go to the mikveh. And you were with her that night. He goes, but I didn't know. He goes, doesn't matter you didn't know. It's your fault. Why? Because the only reason she didn't tell you is because you were angry. So now you have an isur karet on your cheshbon. Better yet, the Gemara says, sometimes the woman is so scared of her husband that when she goes somewhere, she's going to the mikveh, she's in a hurry, she doesn't know if he's going to be mad at her because it's running late, running this. She's not going to watch herself, she can fall into a hole. She can get into an accident because she's not paying attention. She can die because of it. And guess what? He's considered the murderer. He's considered the murderer. Now last but not least, he says he can be considered an idolater in a sense that because he violated Shabbat. How can anger cause him to violate Shabbat? He says because if your wife is scared of you and she wakes up in the morning on Shabbat, Friday night, everybody ate, you sang, all types of nice songs, Bal Yochai, Lecha Dodi, everybody's happy, everything is great. She wakes up the next morning, early in the morning to put the food on the plata. She sees the plata, she forgot to turn it on. She forgot to turn the plata on. So what happens? All the food's cold. All the food's cold. Now she knows if her husband comes back from shul at 12 o'clock and the food's cold, her head is going to be like a picture on the wall. She's so scared of this vicious husband. What does she do? She turns on the plata on Shabbat. So now what happens? She's violated Shabbat. Now you're eating food as a result of Chilul Shabbat. In Shamayim, what is it considered? You're Mechal Shabbat. Now you think, this is all theoretical, the Gemara says this, the Gemara says that. Show me in real life. And that's what we're going to finish with. Before most of you were even born, almost 30 years ago, there was a horrific case in Eretz Yisrael. Almost 40 years ago, actually. There was a horrific case in Eretz Yisrael. Young kid, just turned 18, tried robbing an old lady, grabbed her bag, and ended up getting into some serious trouble. What kind of trouble? He killed her. She didn't want to give him the bag. He took it by force. She fell, hit her head, died. So the trial in Eretz Yisrael, this is not common. It's not like America where there's a murder in every second. In Eretz Yisrael, stuff like this doesn't usually happen. Baruch Hashem. Today it's a little different, but back then it was very, very uncommon. Anyway, in the trial, everybody's crying, the kid's with handcuffs. The mom comes, she's crying, the father comes, she's crying. But then, they say the name of the victim. They tell the kid, you are guilty of committing murder against such and such. On the spot, the mother of the kid, screams her lungs out. No! And passes out. Falls on her face. Everybody's in shock. What happened? They throw some water on her face. You okay? You okay? Listen, okay, the murder, but what happened? She says, what happened? Tell me the name. Who is it again? They say the name again. She screams again, passes out. Passes out. They wake her up and say, lady, what happened? What's going on? She says, over 20 years ago, I went to the mikveh on Friday. And when I got to the mikveh, the balanit was leaving. The woman that runs the mikveh was leaving. And I told her, please, I need to go to the mikveh. She goes, I'm sorry, lady. I gotta go home. I have a family too. I have Shabbat. She goes, please, my husband's gonna kill me. Please help me. Let me be, please. I'm sorry, lady. I have a family. You have to get here earlier. She goes, but I couldn't. The cooking, the cleaning, all the different 1.5 million reasons. I couldn't get here on time. Please, you're already here. You didn't leave yet. You didn't learn to go. I'll be really quick. 5 minutes. She says, from now on, you'll learn to be 5 minutes early. And she closed the door in her face. Now, the woman was petrified of her husband. Petrified. Why? Her husband, the whole day's bothering her about this. The whole day he tells her, honey, don't forget, mikveh tonight. Honey, don't forget, mikveh tonight. Go there on time. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. Go. The poor lady was trying to make a nice, beautiful Shabbat for our family. And she ran late. It happens. 5 minutes late. She was scared to tell her husband. So when her husband saw her, he said, everything okay? Perfect. And they were intimate that night. And that night, that kid came to the world. The kid that 20 years later became a murderer. 20 years later, he became a murderer. So the judge asked the mother, okay, so the kid became a murderer. I get it. It's bad. It's terrible. Why are you screaming? She said, because he just murdered the balanit that didn't let me in to the mikveh. The one that didn't want to wait 5 minutes, that's who he just killed. 20 years ago, the balanit didn't have patience because she had stuff to do and she cared less about this woman's husband. Rightly or wrongly so, that was the reality. That balanit was partner in the crime to a certain extent. How do we know? That's how it worked. You see it in the action. 20 years later, Hashem measured for measure. Hashem measured for measure. The kid you, in essence, brought to the world, who are a partner in bringing in the world as a result of nida, ended up, the parents get karet. Karet is death penalty. 2 parents get death penalty because the balanit didn't want to wait 5 more minutes. They get death penalty. The balanit also gets death penalty. How? The kid that came to the world killed him. Measure for measure, Rabotai. This is extremely important to know because this is how precise Hashem runs the world. The precision of Hashem doesn't work on our timing. Sometimes he waits 5 seconds, sometimes he can wait 50 years in order to reward or punish somebody. The key is for us to focus on the small little details that are part of our day-to-day. One of the most important things is working on our midot, on our character traits. Everyone looks in the mirror and they know what's wrong with them. And I don't mean looks. Everyone knows where they're weak. Some of us are stingy, some of us are arrogant, some of us are angry gremlins, some of us are this, some of us, everybody has a weakness. Pick one and start working on it. Almost all of us have a little bit of anger in us. So that's the one we talked about tonight. Next week, Bezrat Hashem, we'll talk a little bit more about anger and how it affects people's lives, good and bad. And Bezrat Hashem will learn a little bit more. Any questions? Yes?
So you said before that like the punishment of a person is worse if they do like one thing than the other.
Yes.
So like you're not supposed to know the punishment that you're getting. Like you Torah, but you don't know what the punishment is.
Who says that?
Torah.
The Torah says that?
Yeah.
Where does it say that? So, okay.
So he's Torah.
Well, Rabbi told you this?
Like what's the punishment?
Rabbi told you this?
I don't know. I just don't even know that.
So, okay, so let's see.
Like what is the punishment for the one thing and what's the punishment for the other?
I'll tell you. All right, so here we go. So we have a few things. In a, anybody here doesn't keep Shabbat yet? Anybody here doesn't keep Shabbat? Everybody here keep Shabbat? Everybody keep Shabbat? Few people don't keep Shabbat? Don't be embarrassed. I used to also not keep Shabbat.
Not perfect.
Doesn't make you an evil person. Just, it's a mistake. I'll tell you what. So, Hashem says in Parashat Kitisa, He says, ושמרתם את השבת, כי קודש היא לכם, מחלליה מות יומת, כי כל העושה במלאכה ונחרתה הנפש ההיא מקרב עמיה. English translation. Hashem says in Parashat Kitisa, this is the 5 books of Moses, the book of Exodus, chapter 31, verse 12 to 15. He says, you shall observe the Shabbat, for it is holy to you. Its desecrators shall have death upon death. Whoever works on the Shabbat, that soul shall be cut off from amongst his people. So clearly, Hashem tells you the punishment for violating Shabbat. But we see plenty of people, all of us, see plenty of Jewish people driving on Shabbat and they don't die. We see plenty of people lighting cigarettes on Shabbat, but they don't die. So how does this actually work? It's not that there's no punishment. You have to understand what is the Torah. No, he tells you what the punishment is.
They're not dying. It's
Right,
not the
right.
punishment.
No, so it is the punishment. We have to understand how Hashem applies the punishment. So, in the days of Mount Sinai, a week after we received the Torah, there was a person by the name of Tzlofchad. Tzlofchad violated Shabbat, was the first desecrator of Shabbat, Parashat Shlach. He was the first person that ever violated Shabbat. They called him Mekoshesh Etzim. He gathered trees. And you're not allowed to gather on Shabbat. So, Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem, what do we do with this person? It says, ויאמר אדוני משה, מות יומת האיש, רגום אותו באבנים, כל העדה מחוץ למחנה, והציעו אותו כל העדה אל מחוץ למחנה, וירגמו אותו באבנים, וימות כאשר ציווה אדוני את משה. So, Hashem says, chapter 15, book of Numbers, verse 35, Hashem says to Moshe, the man shall be put to death, the entire assembly shall pelt him with stones, outside the camp. The entire assembly removed him outside of the camp, and they pelted him with stones until he died, as Hashem commanded Moshe. In the days of Moshe Rabbeinu, if somebody violated Shabbat, he would get the worst death penalty there is, which is called stoning. Stoning, simply said, is first they throw him off of a 2-story building, then they roll a boulder over him, and then they throw stones at him. That's horrible, vicious death, but that's how a person that violates Shabbat was killed at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, at the time of the Sanhedrin. Now once the Sanhedrin was no longer available, once the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, that did not mean that there was no more death penalty. The Chachamim tell us, how does it, that all of the punishments, all of the Torah is still exactly relevant as it was in Mount Sinai. But the punishment is no longer exercised by us. In those days, if the Jewish court saw somebody desecrating Shabbat, somebody worshiping an idol, they were empowered, they were actually obligated to kill that person. But since we don't have it anymore, the Gemara tells us that now it all becomes a heavenly punishment. Meaning, all punishment, we are not allowed to implement them. Even if we see somebody driving on Shabbat, even if we see somebody idol worshiper, even if we see somebody murder, we're not allowed to do anything to them. But Hashem does it. It all becomes divine. So, how do they explain it? They say this is how it works. Somebody that's a violator of Shabbat, as I just read to you guys, Hashem says he has death upon death, and he's cut off from the nation. Which means these are 3 different deaths. Death upon death, meaning there's 2 deaths, and he's cut off from the nation. So the Chachamim say, what does this mean? How do you die 3 times? It says death upon death means the following. 1, at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, they would kill him. But since there's no more Sanhedrin, now Hashem kills him. When? He kills him early. He was supposed to live 120 years, he dies at 60. he dies at 20, he dies at 50. Meaning every time he violates Shabbat, he loses years that Hashem really wanted to give him to live in this world. This is why you see almost everybody die young. So that's the first death. A person loses their life early. The second punishment of that first death is that Hashem can kill his kids. Until the kid becomes a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, they're in essence considered an extension of the parent. So sometimes you see parents that have young kids die, it's because of this. So that's the first death. What's upon death? What's the second death? Death upon death means, second death means, they have no share of the world to come. Meaning that once this life ends, whenever it ends for everybody, some people like my cousin at 25, some people like my other cousin at 50, some people like Rabbi Yaron Reuven at 110. Different people, different lives. But at some point this life ends, and then eternity begins, meaning forever, the real life. So Hashem says that life has two options. Has heaven and has hell. Okay, no. Now there's multiple names to it. When the Torah says he has no share of the world to come, that doesn't mean heaven. It means the other place. For how long? Forever. When he says he has no share of the world to come, means that he can never ever go to heaven. Ever.
So someone who sinned once that never goes to heaven.
No, not once. Someone that dies a sinner of specific sins without repenting for them can become such a person. Everybody sins. But the point is, and our obligation is to correct those sins by doing tshuva. But someone that lives their life without a care in the world and just sins constantly without ever doing tshuva, yes, that person has a permanent problem. Now, the third part, and then I'll answer more details of the question. So now the guy, let's say, died early. Like my cousin 2 days ago. 50 years old. Poor guy. Then, he's not going to heaven. Right? What's the cutoff from the nation? You still have to explain the last part of the verse. So the Chachamim explain, someone that's cut off from the nation means that while he was alive, he was not considered part of the Jewish nation. Why? Because he was not, or she was not, observing Shabbat, and therefore they were not considered as part of the Jewish people. They were Jews by birth, but you could not consider them Jews according to halakha. Meaning, if you want to have a wedding, a Jewish wedding, you need two witnesses. Someone that violates Shabbat is not allowed to be a witness. Why? Because they're considered in the same class as an idol worshiper. An idol worshiper is not allowed to be a witness. Someone that, for example, is you want to invite your friend for a kiddush on Shabbat. If your friend, or even if your father, whoever you know, doesn't keep Shabbat, and they touch the wine bottle, you're not allowed to drink from it. If it's a specific type of wine, meaning a wine that's uncooked. Why? Because if a idol worshiper touches wine that's open, and it's uncooked wine, that wine becomes part of idolatry. Point being is that person that violates Shabbat is considered as not a Jew. He's considered as an idol worshiper until they do tshuva. If they do tshuva, everything becomes perfect. The point being that all of these sins and punishments and so on, it's not in essence because Hashem wants to punish us. It's because Hashem wants us to know that punishment is an option in order for us not to sin. We all run our life based on fear. Regardless of whether we like it or not, our whole life as human beings is controlled by fear. You don't speed on the highway because you're afraid of getting into a car accident, you're afraid of getting a ticket, you're afraid of endangering other people. You don't not work or not do anything productive with your life because you're afraid of the results that will happen as a result of not being productive. People function in life because they're afraid of the outcome. Same concept here. Hashem told us about the mitzvot and the sins, the reward and the punishment for each and every single mitzvah.
So we know the reward and punishment for every single
Yes. We know the reward and punishment for every single mitzvah. There are psukim in the Torah that talk about each and every single one of them. There's different oral Torah that talks about every detail of every one of them. And the amount of details is extraordinary. You could literally fill up 1,000 Batei Knesset like this, from floor to ceiling with books, and it still wouldn't be even 1% of the books that are written about reward and punishment. There's a lot of details about rule and punishment. So whoever told you that either never learned Torah or they just don't know. I don't know. But they're mistaken. There's a lot of information. And it's okay. A lot of people don't know this because not everybody studies it. That doesn't make them bad. It just makes them ignorant. I didn't know this most of my life either. Once I learned it, and I realized, okay, if I continue driving on Shabbat like I did most of my life, my relationship with Hashem is not going to be so good. Why? He's not looking at me like I want him to look at me. He's looking at me as if I'm an idol worshiper. He's looking.
Are you going to be punished for your past? Or?
If a person does tshuva, there are two types of tshuva. There's tshuva, or really there's correction. There's tshuva that is a person does it only because they're afraid. They're afraid that they're going to get punished, and that's the only reason they do tshuva. That turns all of your past sins into accidents. Meaning, it is, you do get punished for it, but it's a miniature punishment in comparison to what it would be if it was on purpose. There's a higher level of tshuva, which is tshuva out of love. Meaning you love Hashem, and therefore that's why you did tshuva. That actually takes all of the past sins and turns them into mitzvot. So just imagine how many sins we made in our life, and all of that turns into actually things that give us reward. So all the times we stole money, now we get a reward for it. Imagine how great that is. And then there's the third type of tshuva, which is the most common, which is a mix of both. Part of the reason of why we did tshuva is because we're afraid. We're afraid of getting punished in this world. We're afraid of getting punished in the next world. We're afraid of things not happening good in our life. And part of it is because we love Hashem. Because we recognize how good He is to us. How much He gives us. How He gave us money, and He gave us kids, and He gave us this, and He gives us constantly, even though we're not exactly always grateful, at the very least we realize that the minimum that we can show Him as far as gratitude is at least doing what He says. So the more you do what Hashem says, the more you realize that really, you owe Him even more. And He's giving you even before you do what you do. So you fall in love with Hashem, and you fall in love with the mitzvot, and that's the best way to be, and that's the most common tshuva, which is a mix of both. It's a mix of fear and love. But there's no such thing as a tshuva with only love, simply because in order to love Hashem, you have to fear Him first. You have to know what you're dealing with first. And as soon as you understand that Hashem runs the world, it's very easy to fear Him.
I have one more question.
Sure, as many as you want.
Let's say you did something in the past,
Yes.
and you did a real tshuva for it, and then you go back and you do it again.
Very good question. So the Rabbi Yaron Reuven asked the same question. So the Rambam, 900 years ago, writes that tshuva is a 4-step process. Fixing your sins is a 4-step process. First step, stop. Stop the sin. You were stealing, stop stealing. You were driving on Shabbat, stop driving on Shabbat. You are doing something wrong, stop doing it. That's the first step. Everybody understands. Second step, commit to not going back. Commit to not going back. Everybody understands? Yeah, this makes sense. Commit to not going back. Third step, regret the sin. Regret that you sinned in the past. That's where we get a little bit confused. Because logically, we think it should be the first step. The reason why I stopped is because I regret it. That's logically how we think. And the fourth step is that Hashem signs off that you are a Baal Tshuva. You are a Baal Tshuva. So Rabbi Yaron Reuven says, wait a minute, how does this all work? Shouldn't we regret first, then stop, then commit to stopping, and then eventually Hashem signs off? So Rabbi Yaron Reuven gives an amazing chidush. And he says, the Gemara tells us that when a person sins the first time he lights a cigarette on Shabbat, first time she violates our purity, first time a person steals, they know it's not allowed, but they did it anyway. First time they did it, they see nothing happened, that makes them want to do it again. They want to do it again. The next time, they still know it's not allowed, but they saw nothing happen. He drove on Shabbat, and the car didn't explode. He lighted a cigarette on Shabbat, light fire on Shabbat, and his head didn't explode. If everybody that lit a cigarette on Shabbat and their head would explode, nobody would ever smoke. But he smoked on Shabbat, nothing happened. The second time he does it, and nothing happens, the Torah says, in his mind, it now becomes allowed. Why? Nothing happened the first time, fine. But nothing happened the second time, there must be a mistake somewhere. So now it's allowed. So now, that means, Rabbi Yaron says, that means that when we actually first stop sinning, we don't stop sinning because we realize that it's not allowed to drive on Shabbat and it's a bad thing and we regret it. No, technically, the whole time we were driving on Shabbat, the whole time we were intimate without marriage, the whole time we were stealing, we did it more than once, meaning that we arrived at a conclusion that it's all allowed. It's allowed to drive on Shabbat. It's allowed to steal. It's allowed to do all these things because we did it more than once. We got ourselves psychologically set up to a point that we actually believe that everything that we're doing is allowed. No one wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a bad person. Even Hitler, Imach Shimo V'Zichro, actually thought he was a good person. He writes in his book, he's doing a service to the world by getting rid of the cancer that's called Judaism. He thought he's doing a good thing. Obviously, he's a psychopath, but everybody is a psychopath to a certain extent, thinking that whatever they're doing is good. Now, when we first do tshuva, we're not doing tshuva because we believe that what we're doing is wrong. It's that we arrive at a conclusion that we can do better, that we want to do better. Yes, what I did until now is allowed because I did it more than once and I never got punished. So therefore, I was allowed. But now I'm going to stop doing it. I'm going to stop driving on Shabbat. I'm going to stop eating non-kosher. I'm going to stop looking at places I'm not allowed to look at. Not because I'm not allowed, but because I want to be better. I want to be a tzaddik. I want to be a tzaddikah. So we stop sinning. That's the real reason we stop. Now, after we stop sinning, we say, listen, I already stopped driving on Shabbat already for a month. I already stopped smoking already for a month. I already stopped looking at this and that for a month. I already stopped for a while. So you know what? That's it. I'm not going back. I'm not going back to my old life. So now you've committed to not going back. You've fulfilled step number 2. The beauty is that after you're away from the sin for an extended period of time, your perspective starts to change. What is it like? Do you ever see people that work in the sewer? People work in the streets and it really smells? Now sometimes you're going to see those people, they work, and it smells terrible, but they're eating a sandwich. You want to vomit just walking next to them. Walking 5 blocks away, you still smell how filthy and disgusting the sewer is. And they're sitting on top of the sewer, talking to each other, chit-chatting, eating a shawarma. Nothing's wrong with them. You see a guy working in a public restroom, it smells like somebody died twice in there, and the guy's whistling. He's happy, cleaning everything. Hello, senor, hello. Like everybody's happy. How are you even working here? It's so disgusting, filthy, and he's happy. And you, from the outside, like, this is disgusting. How do you do this? How? What's the question? How do you do it? He got used to it. You're not used to it. The rat that's inside the garbage doesn't view the garbage as garbage. He views it as food. Why? He got used to it. He's a rat. You're not a rat. You understand? So the point is, Rabotai, what happens if you take that guy that works in a sewer away from the sewer for an extended period of time, and then you bring him back, all of a sudden he's going to be just like you. Oh, wow, it smells terrible here. How do you guys work here? How are you guys eating here? Well, it's disgusting. If you take the guy from the public restroom out for a little while, and then he goes back, ooh, wow, senor, what you do here? What happened here? Why? Once you're away from the sin for an extended period of time, you realize how disgusting it is. Which means that yes, you first stopped, but not because you thought it was wrong. You stopped because you wanted to become better. Better than the average. You committed to stopping, which got you away from the sin for an extended period of time. And after you've stayed away from the sin for an extended period of time, you realize how disgusting it is. And that leads you to regret. The sin that until that point, you actually thought was allowed. Until that point, you thought it was allowed. Until you stayed away from it for an extended period of time, and you realized, wait a minute, that filth, that smell, was actually coming from me. It was coming from me. I was the smelly one. But that's only after you stayed away from it for a while. And at that moment, step number 4 gets achieved, which means Hashem signs off that you are a Baal Tshuva. So at that moment, you're a Baal Tshuva. Now, why does Hashem say you're a Baal Tshuva? Because you arrive at that conclusion that it's terrible sin. Now what happens if you go back to that sin again? 6 months later, a week later, an hour later. You arrived at a conclusion that it's bad. But then you had a moment of weakness.
Desire.
Something happened. You had a moment of weakness. You went back to the casino. You haven't gone to the casino in 3 years, but you had a moment of weakness. You went in there. I don't know. Your wife got you upset. Your husband got you upset. Everything is upset. Everything is this. You went back to the casino one time. It's considered as if it's the first sin. Doesn't count. Doesn't calculate all the things you did in the past. Why? Because everything you did until this point wiped out already. Finished Teshuva. Now you did the sin again. Starts as first one. Baby steps again. Now we start again. Stop. Commit to stopping. Regret. And Hashem was going to sign off again. That's the beauty, the illogical and irrational beauty of Teshuva. That's how amazing Hashem is. That He literally allows you to start over. Allows you to start over. Doesn't matter what age you are. But that's the beauty. That's what we have to take advantage of. If you take advantage of it, you could literally, doesn't matter what you were in this life. You could literally finish this life as the most righteous person you know. The Ramban writes that every Jew could become as righteous as Moshe Rabbeinu. Every Jew. Every woman could become like Sarai Menu. Every woman. Doesn't matter that you are in the year, 2019, 5779. Doesn't make a difference. You can be as righteous as Sarai Menu. You can be as righteous as Moshe Rabbeinu. You just have to apply it. What you did until now could all go away if you simply apply yourself from this moment on. But if you don't, or if you think you have a lot more time than you do, then that's the problem. That's why Hashem does not tell us when we're going to die. Even when David HaMelech asked him, when will I die, Hashem? Hashem said, you'll die on a Saturday. You'll die on Shabbat. He says, yeah, but when? He says, I can't tell you. Why? If a person knows when he's going to die, or when she's going to die, that removes their free choice. That removes their free choice. And that's why, when they ask, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinos, Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol, for the Rav, what's the secret? He says, do tshuva before you die. He says, yeah, but does anybody know when they're going to die? He says, exactly. Since you don't know when you're going to die, Torah obligates you to do tshuva every day. Every day a little bit more. Every day another mitzvah. Every day another Perek Teilim. Every day a little bit more prayer. Every day learning a little bit more. Every day you add more, and then you'll see a year from today, you're a different version of you. You can't even recognize the old you. 2 years from today, you can't recognize the version that you were a year ago. 3 years, every year you drastically improve. Drastically improve. It's unbelievable how you could improve. And I'm telling you, from experience of seeing many, many people do Teshuva, seeing myself, going through it myself, if you apply yourself, life is unbelievable. If you don't apply yourself, life is simply miserable. Most of us know a lot of miserable people. Very few of us know anybody happy. Which means that the traditional system doesn't work. The traditional system that chases money and chases popularity and chases attention and chases material, it doesn't work. Why? Because all of these attention seekers, materialistic types of people, they're not happy anyway. So that means that it's not working. And the only people that are happy are people that usually look like me. People that have a little bit of a beard sometimes. They don't have a beard. They have a kippah usually. They learn a lot of Torah. That's the people that are happy. They also have problems, but they're happy. Next question. Yes?
How do you do tshuva, other than, stopping your sins?
Well, that's the first thing. First thing is to stop sinning. Now, you can't stop sinning everything, on day one for two reasons. Number one, it's extremely difficult to stop all of your desires overnight. Number two, you don't even know all the things that are wrong yet at day one. So for example, a brand new person that wants to do tshuva, came to shul, was motivated, okay, I want to do something about it. Now, they learned today a little bit about anger. They learned today a little bit about Shabbat. But they didn't learn a lot about other things. Like, so they can do tshuva for those few things. So the first thing is to at least find out about the things that you know about and you're doing wrong. If, let's say, Shabbat is something you don't keep, that's the first thing you have to do tshuva for. But if you're keeping Shabbat, but you know that your kashrut is like 50-50. You're kosher at home, but not outside. Like a lot of Jewish people, they have like kosher style. They eat kosher at home, but they don't eat kosher outside for some reason. They eat salads. And they think that eating salads and non-kosher places is okay. It's not okay. Why? Because the goyim are not obligated to wash their vegetables like Jews are, which means that when you eat salad at a non-kosher place, you're also eating worms and maggots. And each time you eat a salad that has some type of bug, it's like eating pig 6 times. Meaning it's actually worse to eat a non-kosher salad than to eat pig itself. That's how bad it is. Most people don't know this. I didn't know this. And you make those sins. So now that you know it, if you or somebody else was part of that, okay, that's it. That's an easy one to do. Next thing is you start learning about different things that you know that are your weaknesses, and pick one. Pick two. That, okay, I can do this. Now you want to pick one big thing, and as many small things as you can do. Then after that, make learning a part of your day-to-day life. 15 minutes a day, a half hour a day, an hour a day, as much as you can handle. As much as you can, it depends. Different people have different schedules. If you're a mom of 5 kids, most likely 15 minutes a day is a lot for you. But if you're single and you're 20, most likely 3 hours is not a lot for you, because what are you doing today? There's not that much to do. You're still single, you don't have a husband, and then, So it depends, different people, different time. Take advantage of that. Learn as much as you possibly can and try to apply as much as you possibly can. Third thing is, make sure that you have a real rabbi that's going to tell you your weaknesses when you need to know it, and someone that actually knows right and left, meaning not someone that's just complimenting you all the time. It's good to get compliments as long as those compliments are connected to some rebuke once in a while. But someone that's just complimenting you regardless of what you do is going to stunt your growth. So you need to hear the truth once in a while, and sometimes even if that truth is inconvenient. So learning, applying it, and having somebody that is going to give you a little bit of feedback, that's the most critical foundation. Last part is committing to do this for the rest of your life. Meaning, already get it out of your mind that Teshuva is ever over. From now until 120, you'll be doing Teshuva every single day. Not because you made a lot of sins or you didn't make a lot of sins, but because part of a Jewish person's life is to improve themselves a little bit every single day. Even if they're the most righteous person in the world, they still have something to improve. If Moshe Rabbeinu and Sarai Imenu and Avraham Avinu all had something to improve, that means we for sure have something to improve. So, committing to improving yourself, and Teshuva is not just the mitzvot. It's not just wearing a skirt and saying prayers. It's also working on our character traits, improving our character traits, becoming a better human being. That, all of us have a whole list of things we know of that we need to fix. Some have stingency, some are overly zealous, some are angry, some are arrogant, everybody has their own weaknesses. You know at least one or two of your own weaknesses. Start learning about that topic. But from religious Jews, not from secular studies. Like, don't learn from people like Tony Robbins. Like, even though Tony Robbins is admired, unfortunately, by many Jews, Tony Robbins is not exactly the model citizen, if you actually learn what behind the scenes. Like, for example, one of his most popular topics is marriage advice. He's divorced twice. How are you going to take marriage advice from somebody that's divorced twice? It's like asking a homeless guy how to become rich. If you want to get advice how to get divorced, then you get it from him. Because he's good at it. He's an expert. Already did it twice. and most likely the third. Now he tells you how to, do certain things. Well, right now he's being accused of at least 5 counts of sexual molestation. So, I don't know, how ethical could a person like this be? He's popular, he gets 5,000-10,000 people to show up for every one of his seminars, so that means he's a good businessman. But as far as ethical, not so much. So, you have to make sure that your source of information complies with what Hashem wants. And that usually means that it has to come from not only somebody that's an Orthodox Jew, but also someone that's an Orthodox Jew that sticks to the script, doesn't put their own opinion too much. And that's really the most important part of learning in general. Always make sure that whatever it is that you're learning is God's opinion, not some person's opinion. We don't care what my opinion is. We don't care what your opinion is. We don't care what anybody's opinion is. We care about what God's opinion is. Why? Once I know it's God's opinion, I know it's not going to change. So it's very important to know what God said. If God said it, there's no debate. That means I just simply have to find a way to do it. If God didn't say it and somebody else said it, then I have to say, okay, what are they basing it on? So that's the key. So it's learning and doing and fulfilling everything is a lifelong process. And if a person commits to improving themselves on a day-to-day basis, they're definitely going to succeed in life in many, many ways. Much more than you can imagine. Next. Yes?
For example, like a religious person invites somebody that doesn't keep Shabbat, like for example, somebody that is having a dinner and they're inviting someone that drives. Is the person that's inviting the person that's driving doing an Avirah because they're driving to your dinner on Shabbat?
If you did not know that they're going to drive to your Shabbat, then you're not doing an Avirah. But if you found out they drove to your Shabbat, you have to offer them to stay at your house. You have to offer them to stay at your house. If they still choose not to stay at your house, then it's not on you. But you're no longer allowed to invite them. Meaning you cannot invite them on a weekly basis knowing that they're going to drive. No. Then you are enabling them to continue sinning. It's considered as if they're violating Shabbat and you're violating Shabbat. Even though you're not driving, you are enabling them. So all of these people that are saying, no, we're doing kiruv. We're doing kiruv by inviting all of our friends. Okay, you invite your friend once, let's say twice. After the second time, he's still driving the third time, guess what? You're also a sinner. No, but he's my friend, then if he doesn't do it by me, then he's not going to do it at all. Don't do it at all. Then he's going to drive anyway. Let him drive anyway.
What if the person's not Jewish?
Then why is it your Shabbat day?
I mean, let's say for a different time. Not necessarily for the Shabbat meal, but for like in the afternoon or something like that.
So Shabbat?
Yeah.
It's a Shabbat meal. You mean what? So somebody comes over to your house in general just to say what's up? How you doing? Yeah, they're allowed to come to your house if they come on on their own. But in general, you're not really supposed to have goyim at your house on Shabbat. It's the time for you to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, first of all. Second of all, even more importantly, is the goy is not supposed to do anything that you're not allowed to do specifically for you. Unless he's doing it on his own. If he comes on his own, out of his own will, he just shows up at your house, that's no problem. But if you tell him, listen, come to my house on Shabbat at 12 o'clock, then you have a little bit of a problem there. Why? Because technically he drove there for you. And he drove there for you, that's an issue. That's an issue. So, as far as the Shabbat in general, it's important for everybody to learn a little bit about Halachot Shabbat. Anything else? Yes.
Is growth exponential? Like, or is it always just little by little?
No. There is leaps and bounds. There are times that you're going to grow small steps, and then there's times that you're going to catapult drastically in a very short period of time. And I've seen it quite a few times where you see somebody taking a big step and then almost hitting like a wall, and then another big step, and then slow steps, and so on and so forth. Sometimes it's also the opposite, unfortunately. But yeah, no, it's not always small steps. It's not always big steps. No. Yes.
You said that when a man has relations with his wife when she's eating a dog, that it's worse than being with her own mother. Isn't the penalty for both of them stoning?
No. The penalty for nida is worse. The penalty for nida is worse. It's different. It's both a death penalty. But the afterlife penalty for nida is much worse. The details are insignificant. It's just much worse. Next, yes.
Have you personally seen any halachot on medicinal marijuana?
Sure. I have a whole shiur about it. I have a whole shiur about marijuana.
Medicinal, not recreational.
I have a whole shiur about marijuana, and Rav Moshe Feinstein writes that anyone that alters their state of mind intentionally, is considered a ben soreh umoreh. Meaning, if it was a time of the Sanhedrin, you would get a death penalty.
But wouldn't altering your mind mean also nicotine?
No, it's not the same altering.
Makes you like addicted to it.
Or alcohol.
No, it's not the same. It's not the same thing. But it's not the same thing. Quite. No one can really compare it to women. But again, in general, you're not allowed to drink all the time. You're not allowed to smoke cigarettes all the time. You're not allowed to smoke marijuana all the time. But the three are different. But if somebody, to answer your question more directly, if somebody wants to use medical marijuana, they don't need to alter their state of mind. They can take CBD. CBD does not alter your state of mind. It gives you all of the medicinal benefits of the plant without altering your state of mind. Which means that if you still insist on smoking marijuana, it's no longer for medicinal reasons. It's no longer for medicinal reasons. So it's also, even if before CBD came out, before CBD became popularized, like it has been in recent years, you still were not allowed to use medical marijuana if there was a different choice. Like you're not allowed to use something that alters your state of mind, even for medicinal reasons, if there is another choice that doesn't alter your state of mind. So if, let's say, there's a piece of chalk, some pill, that will give you the same cure. Both work. You have marijuana that gets you high and cures you, or helps you with the pain, and you have some, some piece of chemical or something, but that also cures you, or helps you with the pain, but does not alter your state of mind. You are obligated to take the one that doesn't alter your state of mind.
And also, vaping, isn't vaping sort of damaging your body, which is also not fair?
Vaping marijuana or vaping vapor?
Vapor.
No, it's not the same thing.
Technically, it can give popcorn.
It's not the same thing. It doesn't affect your brain cells the same way. At least not to our knowledge. Put it this way. If you don't smoke, you're not allowed to start smoking. Anything. If you already are addicted to, let's say, cigarettes, then there are leniencies, halachically speaking, where it's not to the same extent of sin. It's still not good. It's still not preserving your body. It's still a problem, but there are leniencies, meaning that if you're addicted to smoking, like I was addicted to smoking cigarettes for 20 years, and part of my Teshuva was stop smoking, but I didn't stop smoking right away. It took me years to do it because I had all the right excuses of why I was allowed to smoke. Halachic excuses of why I was allowed to smoke. The only real reason that I came up with that I'm not allowed to smoke is because I know Hashem doesn't want it. That's the only reason. Halachically, I could have continued smoking for the rest of my life. But realistically, I knew that that's not what Hashem wants. Hashem does not want me to smoke. And it created Chilul Hashem, it created a lot of problems. Point being, that's the reason why I stopped. But it wasn't easy. Meaning that if you are already addicted to cigarettes, you can find halachic permissions to continue because there are halachas that discuss it, and there are major chachamim that did it. But marijuana is a completely different thing. Why? Because marijuana literally puts you in a different state of mind. It doesn't give you a buzz or some type of nicotine fix. Marijuana alters your state of mind, similar to how alcohol does, but with less quantity and less effort. So it's a completely different world. People that compare the two are not comparing apples to apples. But even alcohol, you're not allowed to get drunk just because. You're not allowed to get drunk just because. That's not allowed. Again, you have, as a Jew, you have to put yourself in a state of mind where Hashem is next to you at all times. Meaning that if you understand that Hashem is next to you all the times, how dare you be drunk for no reason? How dare you be high for no reason? Now, most people that are fighting the marijuana issue halachically are people that are just getting high because they like getting high. But they're saying it in the name of medicine because, it actually does have medicinal benefits. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to remove this nonsense from the world. So he said, okay, you want to use marijuana for medical benefits? No problem. I made things in the world, and I have a way to make everything allowed in a kosher way. So you can use the medicinal benefits of the marijuana plant, of the cannabis plant. How? By just taking the CBD. You take the CBD, it has no effect, at least not to the same extent as what the full plant does, and that's it. Yes?
So I'm curious as to why Hashem made a whole plant if only half of it was really needed.
Because you could use the rest of the plant for other things.
Why did he make roaches?
You could use the plant for a lot of things.
It's like if he has everything has to have a reason why he made it.
Right, well, I mean, you have to also understand the reason why marijuana became illegal is not because of the drug. It's not because of the drug. Until a few decades ago, 50, 60 years ago, cocaine was legal. Cocaine was legal. They used to put it in Coca-Cola bottles. Babies, Coca-Cola became famous. Why? It was called Coca-Cola because it had cocaine in it. That's what it was called. And they used it to pacify babies that were crying. Because they didn't realize the magnitude of the effect of cocaine, of this cocoa plant, and they didn't realize it's killing people and so on and so forth. And the kids are addicted and so on. Initially, Coca-Cola had cocaine in it. And cocaine continued being legal for many, many years. Morphine was given in regular places, all types of stuff was. So marijuana didn't become illegal because of the drug, because many things that are much, much worse continued being legal even after marijuana became illegal. So why did marijuana become illegal? Because until a little over a century ago, maybe 150 years ago or less, the most common and best product to use to make paper was the marijuana plant. All the books are not made from paper like you have here. If you look at old books, the paper is drastically thicker and better quality than we have today. Why? It's not made from like what we have today. But the paper companies saw that they're making a lot more money by making paper like this, paper like what we have today. But they're fighting against this, the existing suppliers. So what did they do? They got some politicians together. They got a few shekels in their, in some suitcases, and started paying people off to get these people to make marijuana illegal for the drug purposes. Not because they cared about the drug, but because they cared about the money from the paper.
It's all a business.
All the business. It's all the business. That still does not mean that smoking marijuana is allowed. But point being is that not everything is necessarily always what it seems to be. Either way, our Torah tells us that everything has a purpose. The marijuana does not only have a purpose as far as to be smoked. It can be used for medicinal reasons. It can be used to make stuff. It can be used for a lot of different things. Same thing like, for example, David HaMelech asked Hashem, why did you make a spider? Why do we need spiders in the world? Such an ugly little creature. Why do we need it? Well, Hashem says, you asked that question, one day you're going to see that the spider is going to save your life. And one day David HaMelech was hiding from King Shaul, and he ran into a cave. But Shaul was checking every cave. Eventually he arrived at the cave that David HaMelech was in, but he confirmed for sure that David HaMelech cannot be in this cave. Why? Because Hashem miraculously took a spider that made a whole web that covered the entire entrance of the cave. Now, Shaul did a calculation. He says, this web must have taken at least a week for the spider to make. There's no way he made it in 5 minutes. Which means that if David HaMelech would have come here, then I would have seen that the web was broken. The web was completely, it was a miracle. It was complete. So that means that there's nobody inside this cave. So when he went into the cave to relieve himself, he didn't realize that David HaMelech was behind him and he could have killed him. Same thing with the tzira. Tzira is a wasp. David HaMelech asked, why did Hashem create the wasp? Hashem says you'll see in your life that the wasp doesn't save your life. One day David HaMelech was running away from King Shaul. He ran away from him most of his life. And one night he saw that Shaul and his camp and all of his soldiers fell asleep. So he wanted to show Shaul that he doesn't really want to kill him. He doesn't want war. So how is he going to do it? He went up all the way to Shaul while everybody was sleeping, and he cut off a piece of his clothing to show him that he cut off a piece of his clothing, but he didn't kill him. So next day when Shaul wakes up, he sees, a piece of clothing go up, and David HaMelech is going to show him, listen, I'm the one that did it. I could have killed you. But what happened then is that Shaul had one of his generals was huge, was enormous, was like almost like a giant in comparison to us. Huge, enormous person, and his leg fell on top of David and stopped him in his grip. Like he couldn't move. He couldn't move. Now, if he moves, he can wake him up, and then he's going to chop him into 50 pieces. If he doesn't move, then he's going to eventually wake up and chop him into 50 pieces. So he started praying to Hashem. Hashem sent a tzirah, a wasp, that stung the half a giant. Avram stung him in the thigh. He was so big that for him it was like a mosquito. So it just got him enough to move his leg and free David to run away. So the tzirah, the wasp, saved his life. Last but not least, David HaMelech says, why did you make crazy people? One day he was walking around at night, and the Philistines caught him, realizing he's the king, and they brought him to their king. But as soon as he arrived at their king said, why are you bringing me a crazy person? So the Torah says, why did he think that David was crazy? Because David got it into his head that if he sees this king, and this king sees him normal, he's going to confirm he's King David, he's going to kill him on the spot. But if he acts like a crazy person, maybe he's not going to think he's the king. So that's what he did. He acted like a crazy person. And what ended up happening is that Hashem, that day, made both the king's wife and his daughter both go crazy. They both lost their mind that day. So he was dealing with his wife and his daughter going crazy that same day, that when he saw David HaMelech as another person, he's like, this is a crazy person. I need more crazy people. I already have two in my house. So get him out of here, and that saved his life. Point being is that everything and anything that we have in the world has a complete purpose, from Aleph at Taf. Sometimes we know many of the benefits, but I do not believe we know the full benefit of anything in existence. Anything in existence, simply because we are limited as far as our capacity to understand the creation. We're limited. If you look, for example, at a ant, you don't see any benefit to the ant. Why would I, what's worth the ant? I can tell you two benefits off the top of my head. One, Shlomo Melech says, go learn work ethics from the ant. You're never going to see an ant on vacation. Lech l'nemala atzel le'edrachea v'chacham. Shlomo Melech says, go look at the ant, you lazy bum, and learn its ways, and you'll become wise. Why? You see the ant, that even though the ant gathers all of the food that it's going to need for the rest of its life during its first day, it still works non-stop every day for the whole life. 6 months that it lives, it works non-stop. 24 hours a day. So the Chachamim, that knew 70 languages, they knew the language of the bugs. So they spoke to the ant. They asked the ant, you know that your cousin died at 6 months old. Yes. You know that your king died at 6 months old. You know your mom died at 6 months old. You know everybody died at 6 months old. That's the lifetime of the ant. So why do you keep working every day? You already got all the food that you're going to need for the rest of your life on the first few hours. We looked at your house. You had 300 kilos of food. Even, why do you need it? So the ant says, I pray every day that maybe Hashem will give me more life. Maybe Hashem will decide that I'm going to live longer. Everybody else died 6 months, but maybe I'm going to live more. So I'm ready for that. So Shlomo Melech says, go learn from her. Go learn from the ant. Second reason, biologically speaking, or in general, the world-wise, if you didn't have ants, you simply would have filth everywhere. It's part of the cleaning system of the world. Part of the cleaning system of the world, yes?
What about gnats?
Same. They're part of this cleaning system of the world, but they're also part of the way that Hashem punishes people with spreading disease. For example, there was a disease a couple of 100 years ago that killed almost 100 million people, called the Black Plague.
Go through gnats or mosquitoes?
Mosquitoes, same thing. Same thing.
Gnats don't really bite. Gnats just fly around.
They bite. They transfer different types of diseases, they transfer different things, but they also are food for other bugs. Sometimes something exists just to be food. But again, like I said, these are all things that are off the top of my head. I mean, why does a rat exist? Why does a mouse exist? Why does a lion exist? Why does a lot of things exist? There's certain things that we can know of just from seeing how the world works, but there's a lot of things that we're never going to know, simply because we see things from our limited human perspective. Like, for example, a lot of people don't realize that their eyes are the best camera system that can ever exist in the world. And the one thing that most guys are a little bit embarrassed of is crying. Most guys don't like to cry. They feel embarrassed of crying. But in reality, if your eye did not generate an unlimited amount of water, unlimited amount of tears, you simply would go blind. That water that it generates constantly, those tears are what keeps your eye clean, regardless of what goes into it, is what keeps your eye healthy. And if you didn't have it, within a matter of a couple of days, you could literally go blind. So something that we don't like actually ends up being something that helps us in a big way. Point being is that everything has a use. Everything has a use. Next. Said that we have more questions tomorrow, right? Tomorrow we have a show?
Yeah.
Tomorrow night, there's going to be questions and answers. Thank you for learning with me. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.